Welcome, friend, to this peaceful journey through 1,000 years of remarkable lives, where we explore the stories of medieval women whose courage, wisdom, and resilience shaped the very foundations of our world. Tonight, as you settle into comfort and let your mind drift, I invite you to discover the extraordinary tales of ordinary women who lived, loved, and left their mark on history during one of humanity's most fascinating eras. Whether you're seeking rest after a long day or simply yearning to slow the pace of your evening, I'm grateful you've chosen to spend this time exploring these forgotten voices. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight, what draws you to medieval history, and what time it is as you begin this journey with me. There's something magical about how these ancient stories can connect us across centuries and continents. If this gentle exploration of women's medieval history brings you the peace you're seeking, consider joining our community of fellow history lovers. We have many more soothing historical narratives waiting to guide you into restful nights and deeper understanding of our shared past. What I'm about to reveal will transform everything you thought you knew about medieval women. These weren't simply silent figures hidden behind castle walls or faceless peasants toiling in fields. They were merchants commanding international trade networks, scholars preserving ancient wisdom, healers saving lives with revolutionary medical knowledge, and leaders whose political acumen rivaled any king or emperor. The story begins in the year 1000, as Europe emerged from what historians once dismissively called the Dark Ages. Though we now understand this period was far more illuminating than previously imagined. Picture a world where the Roman Empire's collapse had created a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and city-states, each developing unique approaches to governance, commerce, and social organization. In this dynamic landscape, women found opportunities that would have been unthinkable in more rigid imperial structures. Matilda of Tuscany stands as our first extraordinary example, born around 1046 into a world where female leadership was not merely tolerated, but actively cultivated in certain regions of Italy. Her father, Boniface of Canossa, recognized her exceptional intelligence early and provided her with an education that rivaled any prince of her era. She studied Latin, mathematics, military strategy, and diplomatic protocol, preparing for responsibilities that would eventually span decades and reshape the political landscape of medieval Europe. When Matilda inherited her father's domains at age 18, she controlled territories stretching from the Alps to Rome, making her one of the most powerful rulers in Italy. But her true genius lay not in inherited wealth or strategic marriages, though she would navigate both skillfully throughout her life. Instead, Matilda possessed an almost supernatural ability to read political currents and position herself advantageously during the most turbulent period in medieval European politics. The conflict between Pope Gregory VII and Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV, known as the Investiture Controversy, created opportunities for skilled political operators to influence the very structure of European governance. Matilda recognized that supporting the papal cause against imperial authority could secure her independence, while advancing principles she genuinely believed would benefit her subjects and Christendom broadly. Her castle at Canossa became the stage for one of medieval history's most dramatic moments when Emperor Henry IV, excommunicated and desperate to restore his legitimacy, traveled through alpine snows in winter to beg forgiveness from Pope Gregory. For 3 days, Henry stood barefoot in the courtyard, demonstrating the humiliation of imperial power before ecclesiastical authority. Matilda orchestrated this theatre with perfect precision, understanding that symbolic victories could prove more valuable than military conquests. But Matilda's political sophistication extended far beyond dramatic gestures. She developed innovative approaches to territorial administration that balanced local autonomy with centralized coordination, creating governance models that would influence Italian city-state development for centuries. Her legal reforms protected peasant rights while encouraging agricultural innovation, leading to productivity increases that supported population growth and economic expansion throughout her domains. Medieval women like Matilda succeeded not despite the constraints of their era, but by understanding how to navigate and manipulate those constraints to achieve their objectives. The feudal system, often portrayed as uniformly oppressive to women, actually created spaces where exceptional individuals could accumulate power through strategic marriages, inheritance claims, and political alliances that transcended traditional gender roles. Consider Eleanor of Aquitaine, whose life spanned nearly the entire 12th century and whose influence extended from the Pyrenees to the Holy Land. Born around 1122 as heiress to the largest duchy in France, Eleanor received an education that emphasized not just traditional feminine accomplishments like music and embroidery, but also the practical skills of governance, diplomacy, and economic management that would prove essential for ruling vast territories. Eleanor's court in Poitiers became a center of cultural innovation that revolutionized European literature, music, and social customs. She patronized troubadours whose songs celebrated courtly love, transforming relationships between men and women throughout aristocratic society. But this cultural revolution served political purposes as well, creating new forms of loyalty and obligation that strengthened her authority while providing alternatives to traditional feudal bonds. Her marriage to Louis VII of France initially seemed like a conventional political alliance designed to unite Aquitaine with the French crown. But Eleanor quickly discovered that Louis's pious, contemplative nature clashed with her dynamic approach to leadership and governance. Their joint participation in the Second Crusade revealed fundamental incompatibilities that went far beyond personal preferences to encompass different visions of royal authority and international relations. The annulment of Eleanor's marriage to Louis, ostensibly for consanguinity, but actually reflecting irreconcilable political differences, demonstrated her willingness to sacrifice conventional security for greater autonomy and influence. Her subsequent marriage to Henry Plantagenet, who would become Henry II of England, created the Angevin Empire that stretched from Scotland to the Pyrenees, fundamentally altering the balance of power in Western Europe. Eleanor's relationship with Henry proved equally complex, combining genuine political partnership with personal conflicts that reflected broader tensions between competing visions of royal authority. Their sons, including the future Richard the Lionheart and John Lackland, inherited both parents' political ambitions and their tendency toward internecine conflict, creating succession crises that would dominate English politics for generations. During her later years, Eleanor demonstrated remarkable resilience and political acumen as she navigated the challenges of aging in a world that valued women primarily for their reproductive capabilities and family connections. Her regency during Richard's crusading absence revealed administrative skills that had been developed over decades of active involvement in governance, diplomacy, and military planning. The story of Hildegard of Bingen illuminates different but equally significant dimensions of medieval women's achievements in intellectual and spiritual spheres. Born around 1098 in the Rhineland, Hildegard experienced mystical visions from childhood that would eventually establish her as one of the most influential religious thinkers of her era. But her significance extends far beyond spiritual matters to encompass revolutionary contributions to medicine, natural philosophy, music, and linguistic innovation. Hildegard's medical writings, particularly her Physica and Causae et Curae, documented hundreds of remedies using plants, minerals, and animal products, creating comprehensive pharmacological knowledge that saved countless lives throughout medieval Europe. Her observations about human anatomy, disease processes, and therapeutic interventions demonstrated scientific rigor that anticipated methods later associated with Renaissance medicine by several centuries. Her musical compositions, including the Ordo Virtutum, represented innovative approaches to liturgical music that expanded the emotional and theological range of medieval sacred music. Hildegard's songs employed unusual melodic structures and harmonic progressions that created transcendent spiritual experiences for listeners, while advancing musical theory in ways that influenced composers throughout subsequent centuries. Perhaps most remarkably, Hildegard developed her own constructed language, lingua ignota, with its own vocabulary and grammatical structures designed to express spiritual concepts that existing languages could not adequately convey. This linguistic innovation demonstrated intellectual sophistication that challenged conventional assumptions about women's capabilities in abstract reasoning and systematic knowledge creation. Hildegard's correspondence with emperors, popes, bishops, and abbots throughout Europe reveals her influence in political and ecclesiastical affairs that extended far beyond her monastery walls. Her letters provided counsel on everything from theological disputes to diplomatic negotiations, establishing her as a trusted advisor whose judgment was sought by the most powerful figures of her era. The economic achievements of medieval women often remain hidden in historical records that focused primarily on military and political events, but careful examination reveals their crucial roles in commercial development that supported Europe's gradual recovery from post-Roman economic decline. Women participated actively in craft production, long-distance trade, and financial services that created the economic foundation for later medieval prosperity. In textile production, which represented one of medieval Europe's most important industries, women controlled every stage of the process, from raw material preparation to finished product distribution. They developed innovations in spinning, weaving, dyeing, and finishing that improved quality while reducing costs, enabling European textiles to compete successfully in international markets that stretched from Scandinavia to North Africa. Female merchants organized trading networks that connected distant regions and facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies that accelerated economic development throughout medieval Europe. These women possessed intimate knowledge of local markets, transportation systems, and commercial regulations that enabled them to identify profitable opportunities while managing risks that could destroy less knowledgeable competitors. The story of Marjorie Kempe, whose autobiography provides unprecedented insight into medieval women's inner lives and spiritual experiences, reveals the complex relationships between personal faith, social expectations, and individual agency that characterized women's experiences throughout this period. Born around 1373 in King's Lynn, Marjorie navigated the challenges of marriage, motherhood, and mystical religious calling in ways that challenged conventional assumptions about medieval women's limitations and possibilities. Tonight, as we begin this 1,000-year journey through medieval women's remarkable lives, remember that each story we explore represents countless others whose names and deeds have been lost to time, but whose courage, intelligence, and determination helped create the world we inhabit today. These women lived through plague, war, social upheaval, and economic transformation while maintaining hope, pursuing knowledge, and caring for their communities in ways that demonstrate humanity's capacity for resilience and growth, even during history's most challenging periods. Their contributions to medieval banking and finance revolutionized how Europeans understood money, credit, and international commerce. Women like Alessandra Strozzi of Florence managed complex financial portfolios that spanned multiple countries, coordinating investments in everything from textile manufacturing to agricultural estates, while maintaining detailed correspondence that reveals sophisticated understanding of market dynamics and risk management strategies. These financial innovations weren't limited to wealthy merchant families. Ordinary women developed informal credit networks that supported local economies during periods of harvest failure or political instability. They extended loans to neighbors, organized cooperative purchasing arrangements for expensive goods, and created insurance systems that protected families against catastrophic losses. These grassroots financial institutions provided stability that formal banking systems couldn't offer, particularly in rural areas where traditional commercial relationships might take generations to establish. The brewing industry offers another fascinating window into medieval women's economic importance. Alewives controlled beer production throughout much of Northern Europe, developing techniques for fermentation, flavoring, and preservation that transformed simple grains into nutritious beverages that could safely substitute for contaminated water supplies. Their expertise in managing yeast cultures and controlling fermentation processes required deep understanding of biological processes that wouldn't be formally explained until centuries later. These women established taverns and alehouses that served as community gathering places where news was exchanged, business deals negotiated, and social relationships maintained. The economic impact extended far beyond simple beverage sales to encompass hospitality services, entertainment, and information brokerage that made their establishments essential infrastructure for medieval commercial and social life. As we move deeper into the medieval period, the story of Christine de Pizan emerges as a testament to intellectual courage and literary innovation that challenged fundamental assumptions about women's intellectual capabilities. Born around 1364, Christine became Europe's first professional female writer. After her husband's death, left her responsible for supporting 3 children and her mother. Her decision to earn income through writing represented a revolutionary break with traditional expectations about widowhood and female economic dependence. Christine's literary works encompass poetry, political treatises, military manuals, and biographical writings that demonstrated mastery of multiple genres and intellectual traditions. Her Book of the City of Ladies presented systematic arguments for women's intellectual equality, drawing on historical examples and logical reasoning to refute centuries of misogynistic assumptions about female inferiority. This wasn't simply personal advocacy, but scholarly discourse that engaged seriously with philosophical and theological arguments about human nature and social organization. Her military manual, The Book of Deeds of Arms and of Chivalry, provided comprehensive guidance on warfare, strategy, and military leadership, based on extensive research into classical and contemporary sources. The fact that European nobles consulted her work for practical military advice demonstrates the respect her expertise commanded among the most militaristic segments of medieval society. Christine's correspondence with royal courts throughout Europe reveals her influence in diplomatic affairs and political decision-making that extended far beyond literary circles. Her letters discussing international relations, succession disputes, and military campaigns show detailed knowledge of contemporary politics, combined with sophisticated analysis of cause and effect relationships that shaped European development during her lifetime. The story of Joan of Arc represents perhaps the most dramatic example of medieval women transcending traditional limitations through extraordinary personal conviction and political acumen. Born around 1412 in the village of Domremy, Joan emerged from obscurity to alter the course of the 100 Years' War through a combination of military genius, diplomatic skill, and charismatic leadership that inspired French resistance against English occupation. Joan's military innovations included tactical modifications to siege warfare, cavalry deployment, and artillery positioning that proved devastatingly effective against English forces who had dominated French battlefields for generations. Her ability to coordinate different types of military units while maintaining morale during extended campaigns demonstrated strategic thinking that professional soldiers had spent lifetimes developing. But Joan's true genius lay in understanding how religious symbolism could be weaponized for political purposes, while maintaining genuine spiritual conviction that inspired loyalty among followers who might otherwise have remained neutral in dynastic conflicts. Her claim to divine revelation provided legitimacy for challenging established military and political hierarchies, while offering French nobles face-saving opportunities to abandon English allegiances without appearing treasonous. The political implications of Joan's success extended far beyond immediate military victories, to encompass fundamental questions about royal legitimacy, divine authority, and national identity that would influence European political development for centuries. Her coronation of the Dauphin at Reims Cathedral established precedents for popular participation in royal succession that challenged traditional assumptions about inherited authority. Medieval women's contributions to education and knowledge preservation often occurred within religious institutions that provided unique opportunities for intellectual development and scholarly achievement. Abbesses like Hroswitha of Gandersheim created educational programs that rivaled any university of their era, developing curricula that combined classical learning with Christian theology, while encouraging original research and creative expression. Hroswitha's dramatic works represented the first known plays written in Europe since classical antiquity, demonstrating literary sophistication that bridged ancient and medieval intellectual traditions. Her historical writings provided detailed accounts of contemporary political events, while her mathematical treatises explored numerical relationships and geometric principles that advanced European understanding of mathematical concepts. These religious institutions served as repositories for ancient texts that might otherwise have been lost during periods of political upheaval and cultural disruption. Women scribes copied and preserved manuscripts that maintained continuity with classical learning, while adding commentaries and annotations that reflected medieval intellectual developments. The medical achievements of medieval women encompassed both theoretical knowledge and practical healing techniques that saved countless lives throughout this period. Trotta of Salerno contributed to medical texts that became standard references throughout Europe, documenting gynecological conditions and treatments with unprecedented detail and accuracy. Women healers developed surgical techniques, pharmaceutical preparations, and diagnostic methods that advanced medical practice centuries before formal medical education became widely available. Their empirical approach to understanding disease processes and therapeutic interventions created knowledge bases that supported more systematic medical research during later periods. The obstetrical expertise of medieval women was particularly crucial during an era when childbirth represented one of the greatest dangers facing women of all social classes. Midwives developed techniques for managing difficult births, treating complications, and providing postpartum care that dramatically reduced maternal and infant mortality rates in communities where their services were available. As our journey through medieval women's history continues to unfold, we encounter figures whose achievements in art and cultural creation established foundations for European aesthetic development that would influence artistic expression for centuries to come. These women understood that cultural production could serve as a vehicle for political influence, religious expression, and social commentary that reached audiences far beyond immediate geographical boundaries. The textile arts, often dismissed as merely decorative, actually represented sophisticated communication systems that conveyed complex messages about political allegiances, religious beliefs, and social status. Women who controlled these artistic traditions possessed power to shape cultural narratives and influence public opinion through visual imagery that could be understood by both literate and illiterate audiences. Tonight, as these stories wash over you like gentle waves against a peaceful shore, allow yourself to drift into the remarkable world these women created through their courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination to leave their mark on history, despite facing obstacles that would have deterred lesser spirits. Their legacy continues to inspire us as we recognize how their achievements laid groundwork for possibilities we enjoy today, reminding us that progress often requires individuals willing to challenge conventions and imagine different futures than those they inherited. The illuminated manuscripts created by women scribes throughout medieval Europe represented far more than simple copying exercises. These artists developed innovative techniques for gold leaf application, pigment preparation, and calligraphic design that transformed religious and secular texts into objects of breathtaking beauty. Sister Guda, working in the 12th century, signed her name to manuscripts with unprecedented boldness, declaring her artistic identity in an era when anonymity was expected from religious women. These manuscripts served as vehicles for subtle political commentary and theological innovation that could reach influential audiences throughout Europe. Women illuminators embedded symbolic imagery that conveyed complex messages about contemporary events, spiritual concepts, and social relationships that text alone could not adequately express. Their artistic choices influenced how readers understood and interpreted written content, making these women powerful shapers of medieval intellectual discourse. The pigments these artists created from minerals, plants, and precious metals required extensive knowledge of chemistry and material science that anticipated later scientific developments by centuries. Their recipes for creating lasting colors, preventing deterioration, and achieving specific visual effects represented sophisticated understanding of chemical processes that enabled their artworks to survive intact for modern audiences to appreciate. Moving into the 13th century, we encounter women whose entrepreneurial vision transformed European commercial practices and established trading relationships that connected distant regions in unprecedented ways. Margherita Dattini of Prato managed international business operations that spanned from London to Constantinople, coordinating complex financial transactions while maintaining detailed records that provide modern historians with invaluable insights into medieval commercial practices. Her correspondence reveals sophisticated understanding of currency exchange rates, market timing, and risk assessment that enabled her to identify profitable opportunities while avoiding catastrophic losses that destroyed less skillful competitors. She negotiated contracts with suppliers, managed employee relationships, and developed marketing strategies that established her family's commercial enterprises as models for other merchants throughout Europe. The insurance innovations developed by medieval women merchants created financial instruments that made long-distance trade economically viable despite risks from piracy, warfare, and natural disasters that could destroy entire fortunes overnight. These women understood that spreading risk among multiple investors while charging appropriate premiums for different types of coverage could generate profits while providing essential services that supported economic development throughout their regions. The story of Marguerite Porretta illuminates the complex relationships between intellectual freedom, religious authority, and gender expectations that characterized medieval spiritual life. Born in the late 13th century, Marguerite wrote mystical treatises that challenged conventional understanding of the relationship between individual souls and divine authority, developing theological concepts that influenced religious thought for centuries despite official condemnation by ecclesiastical authorities. Her work, The Mirror of Simple Souls, presented sophisticated arguments about spiritual transcendence and divine union that drew on both Christian tradition and philosophical innovations that anticipated later mystical developments. The book's popularity among educated readers throughout Europe demonstrated hunger for spiritual guidance that transcended conventional religious instruction, creating communities of practice that maintained alternative approaches to religious experience. Marguerite's execution for heresy in 1310 reflected not just theological disagreement, but broader tensions about intellectual authority and the right of individuals to interpret religious truth independently of institutional guidance. Her martyrdom inspired subsequent generations of women mystics who continued developing innovative approaches to spiritual practice while navigating dangerous political and religious environments. The economic contributions of medieval women extended into banking and international finance through institutions that provided essential services for commercial development throughout Europe. Women like Francesca Dattini established lending operations that supported agricultural expansion, craft production, and long-distance trade while developing risk assessment techniques that minimized losses from bad loans or economic disruption. These financial innovations included early forms of letters of credit, international currency exchange, and investment partnerships that enabled merchants to conduct business across vast distances without carrying dangerous amounts of precious metals or coins. Women bankers understood that reputation for reliability and fair dealing was more valuable than short-term profits, building customer relationships that supported their institutions through economic downturns and political upheavals. The agricultural innovations developed by medieval women encompassed both practical farming techniques and theoretical understanding of soil management, crop rotation, and animal husbandry that increase productivity while maintaining environmental sustainability. Abbesses managing monastic estates developed systematic approaches to land use that balanced immediate needs with long-term conservation, creating models for sustainable agriculture that supported population growth throughout the medieval period. Women farmers experimented with new crops, breeding programs, and cultivation techniques that adapted to changing climate conditions and market demands. Their empirical approach to agricultural problem-solving created knowledge bases that were transmitted through informal networks connecting rural communities across vast geographical distances, enabling successful innovations to spread rapidly throughout regions where they proved beneficial. The story of Mechthild of Magdeburg reveals how medieval women used mystical experience as a vehicle for social criticism and political commentary that challenged established hierarchies while maintaining plausible deniability about their revolutionary implications. Born around 1207, Mechthild claimed divine visions that authorized her to critique clerical corruption, aristocratic excess, and social injustice with unprecedented boldness. Her writings combined poetic beauty with sharp social analysis that exposed contradictions between Christian ideals and contemporary practice among religious and secular authorities. She developed literary techniques that allowed her to present radical critiques as spiritual revelations, protecting herself from persecution while ensuring that her messages reached audiences who might otherwise have dismissed direct political criticism. Mechthild's influence extended beyond immediate literary circles to encompass broader movements for religious reform and social justice that challenged fundamental assumptions about power, authority, and moral obligation in medieval society. Her work inspired subsequent generations of women writers who continued developing techniques for combining spiritual authority with social activism. The legal achievements of medieval women encompass both theoretical jurisprudence and practical advocacy that advanced concepts of individual rights, due process, and equitable treatment under law. Women like Eleanor de Montfort participated in legal proceedings that established precedents for limiting royal authority and protecting subjects from arbitrary governmental action, contributing to constitutional developments that influenced European political evolution for centuries. These legal innovations often emerged from women's unique positions within feudal hierarchies that gave them standing to challenge decisions that affected their property rights, inheritance claims, or family interests. Their advocacy established principles that extended beyond immediate personal concerns to encompass broader questions about legal procedure and governmental authority that benefited entire communities. Medieval women judges and legal advisors developed expertise in both canon and civil law that enabled them to navigate complex jurisdictional disputes while providing guidance to parties seeking resolution of conflicts involving marriage, property, commercial agreements, and criminal accusations. Their decisions created precedents that influenced legal development throughout their regions while establishing reputations for fairness and competence that attracted clients from distant areas. The architectural achievements of medieval women encompass both practical building design and theoretical understanding of engineering principles that enabled construction of churches, castles, and civic buildings that demonstrated sophisticated technical knowledge. Abbesses planning monastic complexes developed innovative approaches to water management, heating systems, and structural engineering that created comfortable living environments while demonstrating aesthetic sensibilities that influenced architectural development throughout Europe. Women patrons commissioning major construction projects worked closely with architects and craftsmen to develop building programs that balanced functional requirements with symbolic purposes, creating structures that served immediate practical needs while conveying messages about power, authority, and cultural values that would influence viewers for generations. As our gentle journey through these remarkable lives continues, we discover how medieval women's achievements in diplomacy and international relations helped maintain peace between competing kingdoms while facilitating cultural exchange that enriched European civilization. These women understood that successful negotiation required deep knowledge of local customs, religious beliefs, and political interests that could only be acquired through careful study and respectful engagement with diverse communities. Their diplomatic correspondence reveals sophisticated understanding of cause and effect relationships in international affairs, combined with practical wisdom about human psychology and group dynamics that enabled them to identify mutually beneficial solutions to apparently intractable conflicts. These achievements remind us that medieval women possessed intellectual capabilities and practical skills that enabled them to succeed in the most challenging professional environments while maintaining commitments to family, community, and spiritual development that defined meaningful lives in their era. Tonight, as these stories of courage and achievement wash over you, remember that each woman we encounter represents countless others whose names have been lost, but whose contributions created the foundations for possibilities we enjoy today. Demonstrating that progress requires individuals willing to challenge limitations and imagine different futures than those they inherited from previous generations. The 14th century brought unprecedented challenges that tested medieval women's resilience and adaptability as the Black Death swept across Europe, fundamentally altering social structures and creating new opportunities for those who survived. In this transformed landscape, women like Bridget of Sweden emerged as prophetic voices whose spiritual authority transcended traditional boundaries between secular and religious power, establishing new forms of influence that would reshape European Christianity for generations. Born around 1303 into Swedish nobility, Bridget possessed an extraordinary combination of mystical insight and practical political intelligence that enabled her to navigate the complex relationships between competing papal claims, royal succession disputes, and popular religious movements that characterized her turbulent era. Her revelations, recorded in meticulous detail throughout her adult life, provided spiritual guidance that influenced everything from individual moral decisions to international diplomatic negotiations involving the most powerful rulers of medieval Europe. Bridget's pilgrimage to Rome transformed her from regional religious figure into international spiritual authority whose counsel was sought by popes, emperors, and kings throughout Christendom. Her establishment of the Bridgetine order created institutional frameworks that preserved her teachings, while providing educational and charitable services that addressed practical needs of communities struggling to recover from demographic catastrophe and economic disruption caused by repeated plague outbreaks. The economic innovations developed by post-plague women entrepreneurs reflected their understanding that traditional commercial relationships had been permanently altered by demographic collapse and social transformation. Women like Alice de Brienne adapted their business strategies to exploit new market opportunities created by labor shortages and changed consumption patterns, demonstrating remarkable flexibility in adjusting to unprecedented economic conditions. Alice's detailed household accounts reveal sophisticated understanding of supply chain management, inventory control, and cost accounting that enabled her to maintain profitable operations despite volatile prices and unreliable suppliers. Her success in managing complex agricultural and commercial enterprises provided employment for hundreds of workers, while generating revenues that supported charitable activities and capital investments that benefited entire regions of Eastern England. The brewing operations controlled by post-plague women expanded dramatically as traditional guild restrictions collapsed and labor shortages created opportunities for skilled entrepreneurs to enter previously closed markets. These women developed innovations in production techniques, quality control, and distribution networks that transformed local beverage industries while establishing commercial relationships that connected distant regions through trade networks focused on their products. Margaret Paston's correspondence provides unprecedented insight into how 15th century women managed complex family enterprises that encompassed agricultural estates, commercial investments, and political relationships requiring constant attention and sophisticated decision-making. Her letters reveal deep understanding of legal procedures, financial management, and strategic planning that enabled her family to maintain prosperity and social position despite civil warfare and economic instability that destroyed many contemporary dynasties. Margaret's role in managing the Paston family's extensive legal disputes demonstrates her mastery of procedural requirements and evidentiary standards that enabled her to protect valuable property rights while pursuing favorable settlements of inheritance claims that had been contested for generations. Her success in these complex legal battles required not just technical knowledge, but also psychological insight into the motivations and vulnerabilities of opposing parties that could be exploited through careful negotiation and strategic pressure. The Paston women's political activities during the Wars of the Roses illustrate how medieval women navigated factional conflicts that could destroy families who chose incorrectly or failed to maintain flexibility as political circumstances evolved. Their correspondence reveals sophisticated analysis of military developments, court politics, and regional power dynamics that enabled them to make strategic decisions about allegiances and investments that preserved family interests despite decades of political turmoil. During this same period, women mystics throughout Europe developed innovative approaches to spiritual experience that challenged conventional understanding of religious authority while creating new forms of community organization that provided alternatives to traditional monastic institutions. Catherine of Siena exemplified these developments through mystical experiences that authorized her to intervene directly in papal politics while maintaining credibility as spiritual guide whose counsel was sought by the most powerful religious and secular authorities of her era. Catherine's letters to Pope Gregory XI, urging his return from Avignon to Rome, demonstrate remarkable boldness in addressing the most sensitive political issues of her time, while maintaining spiritual authority that protected her from accusations of inappropriate interference in matters beyond her proper concern. Her success in influencing papal decision-making established precedents for female spiritual authority that would inspire subsequent generations of women seeking to combine religious vocation with social activism. The diplomatic missions Catherine undertook on behalf of papal and civic authorities revealed her exceptional abilities in international negotiation and conflict resolution that drew on both spiritual charisma and practical understanding of political psychology. Her interventions in disputes between Italian city-states helped prevent warfare while establishing peaceful relationships that supported economic development and cultural exchange throughout central Italy. The medical achievements of medieval women during this period encompassed both traditional healing practices and innovative surgical techniques that addressed health challenges created by urbanization, dietary changes, and new disease patterns that emerged as European society recovered from demographic catastrophe. Women physicians like Jacobina Felici developed comprehensive approaches to patient care that combined empirical observation with theoretical understanding of disease processes, creating treatment protocols that achieved remarkable success rates given available resources and technological limitations. These medical innovations included sophisticated diagnostic techniques that enabled early identification of serious conditions, pharmaceutical preparations that utilized newly available ingredients from expanded international trade networks, and surgical procedures that addressed traumatic injuries with unprecedented precision and success rates. Women practitioners shared knowledge through informal networks that connected urban centers with rural communities, ensuring that medical advances reached populations who might otherwise have lacked access to professional health care. The obstetrical expertise developed by medieval midwives during this period reflected their deep understanding of maternal and infant physiology, combined with practical experience managing complications that could prove fatal without skilled intervention. Their innovations in pain management, infection prevention, and emergency procedures reduced maternal mortality rates while improving outcomes for newborns in communities where their services were available. As we move deeper into the 15th century, the story of Joan of Arc's contemporary, Yolande of Aragon, reveals how royal women wielded political influence through strategic marriages, territorial administration, and diplomatic initiatives that shaped the course of European development during one of history's most transformative periods. Born around 1384, Yolande possessed exceptional political intelligence that enabled her to navigate complex succession disputes while maintaining independence and authority that rivaled any male ruler of her era. Yolande's role in supporting the Dauphin's claim to the French throne involved not just financial backing, but comprehensive political strategy that coordinated military operations, diplomatic negotiations, and propaganda campaigns designed to undermine English legitimacy, while establishing French royal authority throughout territories that had been disputed for generations. Her recognition of Joan of Arc's potential and her decision to support the young visionary's mission demonstrated remarkable insight into popular psychology and the power of symbolic leadership during periods of national crisis. The territorial administration developed by Yolande in her various domains created models for efficient governance that balanced local autonomy with centralized coordination, establishing administrative procedures that maximized revenue collection while maintaining popular support through fair treatment of subjects and responsive attention to regional needs and concerns. Her innovations in tax collection, judicial administration, and economic development influenced governmental practices throughout medieval Europe. Yolande's patronage of arts and learning established cultural centers that preserved classical knowledge while encouraging innovative approaches to literature, music, and visual arts that would influence European aesthetic development for centuries. Her court attracted scholars, artists, and intellectuals from throughout Europe, creating intellectual networks that facilitated exchange of ideas and techniques that advanced human knowledge across multiple disciplines. The story of Isotta Nogarola illuminates the challenges and opportunities faced by Renaissance women who sought to participate in intellectual movements that were transforming European approaches to education, scholarship, and cultural production. Born in 1418 into a prominent Veronese family, Isotta received unprecedented educational opportunities that enabled her to master Latin, Greek, and classical literature, while developing original approaches to philosophical and theological questions that engaged with the most sophisticated intellectual discourse of her era. Isotta's public debates with male scholars on questions ranging from moral philosophy to biblical interpretation demonstrated intellectual capabilities that challenged conventional assumptions about women's reasoning abilities, while establishing her reputation as a serious thinker, whose contributions merited attention from leading intellectuals throughout Italy. Her correspondence with humanist scholars reveals deep engagement with classical texts, combined with innovative interpretations that advance contemporary understanding of ancient wisdom. The personal costs of Isotta's intellectual achievements included social isolation and criticism from contemporaries, who viewed her scholarly activities as inappropriate for women, demonstrating the ongoing tensions between individual potential and social expectations that characterized women's experiences throughout the medieval period. Her decision to withdraw from public intellectual life after facing sustained criticism reveals the psychological pressures that exceptional women faced when challenging traditional limitations on female participation in scholarly discourse. The economic transformations of the late medieval period created new opportunities for women entrepreneurs who understood how to exploit changing market conditions and technological innovations that were reshaping European commercial relationships. Women like Margherita d'Attini expanded their family's international trading operations to encompass new products and markets while developing financial instruments that facilitated complex transactions across vast geographical distances. These commercial innovations included early forms of international banking, insurance services, and investment partnerships that enabled merchants to conduct business with reduced risk, while generating profits that could be reinvested in expanded operations or diversified into new economic sectors. Women entrepreneurs demonstrated particular skill in identifying emerging market opportunities and developing business strategies that could adapt quickly to changing conditions. The textile innovations developed by women producers during this period encompassed both technical improvements in manufacturing processes and aesthetic innovations that established new standards for quality and design that influenced European fashion and decorative arts for centuries. Their mastery of dyeing techniques, weaving patterns, and finishing procedures created products that commanded premium prices in international markets, while establishing regional specializations that supported local economic development. As our peaceful journey through these remarkable lives continues to unfold, we encounter women whose achievements in cartography and navigation contributed to the geographical knowledge that would soon enable European exploration and expansion into previously unknown territories. These women understood that accurate mapping required not just artistic skill, but sophisticated mathematical knowledge and careful observation of astronomical phenomena that could provide reliable guidance for travelers venturing into unfamiliar regions. The astronomical observations recorded by medieval women scholars contributed to improved understanding of celestial mechanics and calendar systems that enhanced agricultural planning, religious observances, and international communication throughout Europe. Their calculations helped resolve discrepancies between different dating systems, while providing more accurate predictions of eclipses, seasonal changes, and other natural phenomena that affected human activities. Tonight, as these stories of intellectual courage and practical achievement continue to wash over you like gentle moonlight on still waters, allow yourself to appreciate how these medieval women created foundations for human progress through their willingness to challenge limitations and pursue knowledge, despite facing obstacles that would have discouraged less determined spirits, reminding us that every generation inherits possibilities that previous generations fought to create through their courage, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to leaving the world better than they found it. Their contributions to medieval cartography extended far beyond simple map-making, to encompass comprehensive geographical knowledge that supported both commercial expansion and diplomatic relations throughout Europe. Women like the anonymous cartographer who created detailed maps of Mediterranean trade routes possessed intimate understanding of seasonal weather patterns, harbour conditions, and political relationships that affected safe passage for merchant vessels carrying valuable cargo between distant ports. These geographical innovations required synthesis of information gathered from multiple sources, including returning travellers, diplomatic correspondence, and commercial records that provided insights into territorial boundaries, resource availability, and cultural practices that could affect successful navigation and trade relationships. Women cartographers developed techniques for representing complex three-dimensional landscapes on two-dimensional surfaces, while maintaining accuracy that enabled practical use by navigators who depended on their work for survival. The linguistic achievements of medieval women encompassed both preservation of ancient languages and development of vernacular literature that made classical knowledge accessible to broader audiences throughout Europe. Women translators working in monasteries and noble courts created comprehensive libraries that maintained continuity with Greek and Roman intellectual traditions, while adapting ancient wisdom to contemporary circumstances and concerns. Héloïse, the brilliant scholar whose correspondence with Peter Abelard illuminates 12th century intellectual life, demonstrated mastery of Latin, Greek, and Hebrew that enabled her to engage directly with original sources while developing original interpretations that advanced contemporary understanding of philosophical and theological questions. Her letters reveal not just personal passion, but sophisticated analytical thinking that contributed to scholastic developments throughout medieval Europe. The educational programs developed by women religious leaders created institutional frameworks that provided advanced learning opportunities for both male and female students, establishing curricula that balance classical studies with practical skills necessary for effective participation in contemporary society. These institutions served as bridges between ancient knowledge and medieval innovation, ensuring that valuable intellectual traditions remained available for future generations, while encouraging creative applications to contemporary challenges. The story of Mechtild of Hackerborn reveals how medieval women used administrative skills to manage complex religious institutions that provided essential services to their communities while maintaining high standards of intellectual and spiritual development. Born around 1241, Mechthild combined mystical spirituality with practical governance abilities that enabled her abbey to flourish despite political upheavals and economic challenges that destroyed less well-managed institutions. Mechthild's administrative innovations included comprehensive record-keeping systems that tracked financial transactions, property management, and personnel decisions with unprecedented detail and accuracy. Her approaches to resource allocation balanced immediate needs with long-term sustainability while maintaining charitable obligations that supported community welfare during periods of economic hardship and social disruption. The educational philosophy developed by Mechthild emphasized integration of contemplative practice with active service, creating balanced approaches to religious life that prepared students for leadership roles in both secular and ecclesiastical contexts. Her teaching methods combined traditional theological study with practical training in administration, diplomacy, and social service that equipped graduates with skills necessary for effective participation in medieval public life. The agricultural innovations implemented by medieval women landowners encompassed both theoretical understanding of soil science and practical experience with crop management that increased productivity while maintaining environmental sustainability. Women like Isabella de Fortibus developed comprehensive estate management strategies that balanced agricultural production with forest conservation, creating integrated approaches to land use that supported both immediate economic needs and long-term resource preservation. Isabella's management of her extensive English estates demonstrated sophisticated understanding of market relationships, seasonal planning, and risk assessment that enabled her to maintain profitability despite climatic variations and political instability that challenged less skilled administrators. Her innovations in crop rotation, livestock management, and infrastructure development created models that influenced agricultural practices throughout medieval England. The technological innovations developed by women craftspeople during this period encompass both improvements to existing production techniques and entirely new approaches to manufacturing that increased efficiency while maintaining quality standards. Women metalworkers developed alloy compositions and forging techniques that created superior weapons and tools, while women textile producers invented mechanical improvements to spinning and weaving equipment that increased productivity without sacrificing craftsmanship. These technological advances often emerged from women's intimate understanding of materials and processes gained through years of hands-on experience combined with willingness to experiment with new approaches when traditional methods proved inadequate for changing market demands or resource availability. Their innovations spread through informal networks, connecting craftspeople across vast geographical distances, enabling successful techniques to be rapidly adopted throughout regions where they proved beneficial. The story of Marie de France illuminates how medieval women used literary creativity to explore complex themes related to love, power, and social justice, while entertaining audiences throughout the aristocratic courts of medieval Europe. Writing in the 12th century, Marie created narrative poems that combined entertainment value with subtle social commentary, establishing literary techniques that influenced European storytelling traditions for centuries. Marie's lays, or short narrative poems, demonstrated mastery of multiple literary traditions while developing innovative approaches to character development and plot structure that created more psychologically complex protagonists than had been typical in earlier medieval literature. Her female characters possessed agency and intelligence that challenged conventional assumptions about women's capabilities while providing positive role models for contemporary audiences. The political themes explored in Marie's works addressed contemporary concerns about justice, governance, and social responsibility through allegorical narratives that could convey critical messages without directly challenging established authorities. Her sophisticated understanding of court politics enabled her to create stories that entertained powerful patrons while subtly advocating for more equitable treatment of marginalized groups throughout medieval society. The medical schools established by medieval women, physicians created institutional frameworks that preserved and transmitted healing knowledge, while encouraging original research that advanced understanding of human anatomy, disease processes, and therapeutic interventions. The School of Salerno, where women like Trotta taught and practiced, became a model for medical education that influenced institutional development throughout Europe. These medical institutions emphasized empirical observation and careful documentation of treatment outcomes, creating knowledge bases that supported more systematic approaches to healthcare, while maintaining flexibility to adapt treatments to individual patient needs and local resource availability. Women physicians developed comprehensive diagnostic procedures that enabled early identification of serious conditions while creating treatment protocols that maximize therapeutic effectiveness within available technological limitations. The pharmaceutical innovations developed by medieval women healers encompassed both traditional herbal remedies and experimental compounds that utilized newly available ingredients from expanded international trade networks. Their understanding of drug interactions, dosage calculations, and patient monitoring created safer and more effective therapeutic approaches that saved countless lives throughout the medieval period. As we venture into the 14th century, the extraordinary life of Julian of Norwich emerges as a testament to how medieval women used mystical experience as a foundation for sophisticated theological reflection that advanced Christian understanding while providing practical guidance for spiritual development. Born around 1342, Julian survived the Black Death and used her near-death experience as inspiration for extended meditation on divine love and human suffering that produced some of the most profound religious writing in medieval literature. Julian's revelations of divine love demonstrated remarkable theological sophistication, combined with deep psychological insight into human nature and spiritual development. Her systematic exploration of concepts like divine mercy, human sin, and eternal salvation created comprehensive theological frameworks that influenced Christian thought for centuries, while providing practical guidance for individuals seeking deeper spiritual understanding. The innovative theological concepts developed by Julian included revolutionary ideas about divine feminine characteristics and universal salvation that challenged conventional doctrinal assumptions while maintaining orthodoxy through careful attention to established scriptural and patristic authorities. Her theological method combined mystical experience with rational analysis, creating approaches to religious understanding that balanced emotional engagement with intellectual rigor. The manuscript traditions preserved and developed by medieval women scribes encompassed both faithful copying of existing texts and creative adaptations that made ancient wisdom accessible to contemporary audiences. Women like Ende, the 10th century illuminator who signed her name to the Beatus of Girona, created visual interpretations of religious texts that enhanced understanding, while demonstrating remarkable artistic skill and theological sophistication. These manuscript innovations included development of new calligraphic styles, pigment formulations, and page layouts that improved both aesthetic appeal and practical usability of written materials. Women scribes understood that effective communication required attention to visual design elements that could enhance reader comprehension while creating beautiful objects that honored the sacred knowledge they contained. The library systems developed by women religious leaders created comprehensive repositories for written knowledge that served both immediate institutional needs and long-term preservation of intellectual traditions. Their cataloging systems, storage techniques, and copying procedures ensured that valuable texts remained available for future generations while facilitating access by contemporary scholars and students. The entrepreneurial achievements of medieval women merchants extended beyond simple buying and selling to encompass comprehensive business strategies that integrated production, distribution, and financial services in ways that maximize profitability while supporting broader economic development throughout their regions. Women like Godith of Winchester developed international trading networks that connected English producers with continental markets, while providing essential services that facilitated commercial relationships across vast geographical distances. These commercial innovations included early forms of market research, competitive analysis, and strategic planning that enabled women entrepreneurs to identify profitable opportunities while avoiding costly mistakes that could destroy less well-informed competitors. Their success in international trade required mastery of multiple languages, currencies, and legal systems that demonstrated intellectual capabilities rivaling any contemporary male merchants. The financial services developed by medieval women entrepreneurs encompass both traditional banking functions and innovative investment strategies that supported economic expansion while generating profits that could be reinvested in expanded operations or community development projects. Their understanding of risk assessment, portfolio management, and international finance created business models that influenced commercial development throughout medieval Europe. Tonight, as these remarkable stories continue to unfold, like ancient tapestries revealing their intricate patterns in candlelight, remember that each woman we encounter represents not just individual achievement, but collective human progress that emerged through countless acts of courage, creativity, and determination that challenged limitations while creating possibilities for future generations who would inherit a world enriched by their contributions to knowledge, culture, and social development. The diplomatic achievements of medieval women encompassed both formal negotiations between competing political authorities and informal relationship building that maintained peace and cooperation during periods when warfare might otherwise have devastated entire regions. Women like Blanche of Castile understood that successful diplomacy required deep knowledge of cultural differences, religious beliefs, and economic interests that could be leveraged to create mutually beneficial agreements between parties, who might otherwise view each other as irreconcilable enemies. Blanche's regency during her son's minority demonstrated exceptional political skill in managing competing noble factions while maintaining royal authority and territorial integrity despite challenges from powerful vassals who viewed female rule as illegitimate. Her success in preserving and expanding French royal power established precedents for effective governance that influenced European political development for centuries. The cultural patronage provided by medieval women rulers and wealthy merchants created institutional frameworks that supported artistic, literary, and intellectual development throughout Europe. Their commissioning of major architectural projects, manuscript illuminations, and musical compositions provided employment for countless artists and craftspeople while creating cultural monuments that enriched human civilization and demonstrated the aesthetic sensibilities and intellectual sophistication of their patrons. These cultural investments encompassed both preservation of existing traditions and encouragement of innovative approaches that pushed artistic boundaries while maintaining connection to established aesthetic principles. Women patrons understood that cultural development required balance between continuity and change, supporting artists who could honor traditional techniques while exploring new possibilities for creative expression. The architectural achievements sponsored by medieval women encompassed both practical building projects that served immediate community needs and symbolic monuments that conveyed messages about power, authority, and cultural values that would influence viewers for generations. Women like Eleanor of Provence coordinated complex construction projects that required mastery of engineering principles, resource management, and artistic design while maintaining attention to budgetary constraints and political considerations that could affect project completion. The engineering innovations implemented in buildings commissioned by medieval women included advanced techniques for structural support, climate control and energy efficiency control, and water management that created more comfortable and functional living environments while demonstrating sophisticated understanding of physical principles that would not be formally explained until centuries later. Their architectural legacies continue to inspire admiration and study by contemporary observers, who marvel at the technical sophistication achieved with medieval tools and materials. As our gentle journey through these luminous lives continues, we encounter women whose achievements in natural philosophy and proto-scientific investigation laid groundwork for systematic approaches to understanding the physical world that would eventually develop into modern scientific method. Medieval women scholars combined careful observation with theoretical reflection, creating knowledge that advanced human understanding of natural phenomena while providing practical benefits for their communities. The botanical knowledge preserved and developed by medieval women encompassed both medicinal applications and agricultural innovations that supported human health and economic prosperity throughout Europe. Women herbalists maintained comprehensive gardens that served as living laboratories for investigating plant properties while providing resources for treating diseases and maintaining nutritional health in their communities during periods when food scarcity threatened survival. Their systematic observations of plant growth patterns, seasonal variations, and environmental requirements created agricultural knowledge that enabled more efficient crop production while maintaining soil fertility and preventing environmental degradation that could destroy long-term productivity. These innovations supported population growth and economic expansion that characterized the medieval period's later centuries. The astronomical observations recorded by medieval women scholars contributed to improved calendar systems and navigational techniques that enhanced both religious observance and commercial activity throughout Europe. Women like the anonymous astronomer who calculated eclipse predictions for the court of Frederick II demonstrated mathematical sophistication that enabled accurate forecasting of celestial events while advancing theoretical understanding of planetary motion and stellar relationships. These astronomical achievements required mastery of complex mathematical calculations, combined with patient observation of celestial phenomena over extended periods, creating knowledge that served both practical navigation needs and theoretical understanding of cosmic order that influenced medieval worldview and intellectual development. Their contributions to astronomical knowledge provided foundations for later scientific advances that would revolutionize human understanding of the universe. The mathematical innovations developed by medieval women scholars encompass both theoretical advances in numerical relationships and practical applications that solved real-world problems facing their communities. Women working in monastic scriptoriums developed calculation techniques that enabled more accurate accounting systems, architectural measurements, and astronomical predictions, while creating educational materials that transmitted mathematical knowledge to future generations of scholars and practitioners. These mathematical achievements included innovations in geometric principles that supported architectural design, algebraic methods that facilitated commercial calculations, and trigonometric concepts that enhanced navigational accuracy. Women mathematicians understood that abstract numerical relationships could provide powerful tools for understanding and manipulating physical reality, creating theoretical frameworks that would influence scientific development for centuries. The mechanical innovations developed by medieval women. Craftspeople encompassed both improvements to existing tools and entirely new devices that increased productivity while reducing physical labor required for essential tasks. Women working in textile production created spinning wheels, looms, and dyeing equipment that revolutionized cloth manufacturing while maintaining quality standards that enabled European textiles to compete successfully in international markets. These technological advances often emerge from women's intimate understanding of production processes, combined with willingness to experiment with new approaches when traditional methods proved inadequate for changing demands or resource limitations. Their innovations spread through networks connecting craftspeople across vast distances, enabling successful techniques to be rapidly adopted throughout regions where they proved beneficial for economic development and community welfare. The story of Marguerite de Wang reveals how medieval women used vernacular writing to make religious and philosophical concepts accessible to broader audiences who lacked formal education in Latin but possessed genuine hunger for spiritual guidance and intellectual stimulation. Writing in the late 13th century, Marguerite created devotional texts in her native Franco-Provençal dialect that combined theological sophistication with emotional immediacy, establishing literary traditions that influenced religious expression throughout medieval Europe. Marguerite's mystical writings demonstrated remarkable ability to translate complex theological concepts into language that ordinary people could understand and apply to their daily spiritual practices. Her descriptions of divine union combine personal experience with systematic reflection, creating guides for spiritual development that serve both individual seekers and religious communities throughout her region and beyond. The pedagogical innovations developed by Marguerite included teaching methods that emphasized experiential learning rather than purely theoretical instruction, creating educational approaches that engage students emotionally and intellectually while providing practical skills for spiritual growth and community service. Her influence extended beyond immediate religious circles to encompass broader movements for vernacular education that made knowledge accessible to previously excluded populations. The textile innovations developed by medieval women during the 14th and 15th centuries encompassed both technical improvements in production processes and aesthetic advances that established new standards for design and quality that influenced European fashion and decorative arts for generations. Women dyers created color formulations using imported materials from Asia and Africa, producing hues that had never been achieved in European textiles, while developing techniques for color-fast dyeing that prevented fading during washing or exposure to sunlight. These innovations in textile production required sophisticated understanding of chemistry, materials science, and artistic design that enabled women producers to create fabrics that commanded premium prices in international markets while establishing regional specializations that supported local economic development. Their mastery of complex technical processes, combined with aesthetic sensibility, created products that served both practical needs and symbolic purposes in medieval society. The commercial networks established by women textile producers connected European manufacturing centers with raw material suppliers throughout the Mediterranean and beyond, creating trading relationships that facilitated cultural exchange while generating profits that supported expanded operations and community development. Their business strategies balanced quality production with cost control, enabling sustained profitability while maintaining employment for skilled craftspeople throughout their regions. As we move deeper into the 15th century, the remarkable story of Laura Serrata emerges as testimony to how Renaissance humanism created new opportunities for women's intellectual development, while also generating resistance from traditionalists who viewed female scholarship as threatening to establish social hierarchies. Born in 1469, Laura received unprecedented educational opportunities that enabled her to master classical languages and engage directly with ancient texts while developing original contributions to contemporary philosophical debates. Laura's letters to male scholars throughout Italy demonstrate exceptional intellectual confidence combined with sophisticated understanding of classical rhetoric and philosophical argumentation that enabled her to participate as equal in academic discussions that had traditionally excluded women entirely. Her defenses of female intellectual capability drew on both classical authorities and contemporary examples, creating systematic arguments that challenged fundamental assumptions about gender and reasoning ability. The personal costs of Laura's intellectual achievements included social isolation and criticism from contemporaries who viewed her scholarly activities as inappropriate violation of traditional feminine roles, demonstrating ongoing tensions between individual potential and social expectations that characterized women's experiences throughout the medieval period. Her eventual withdrawal from public intellectual life reveals psychological pressures that exceptional women faced when challenging established limitations on female participation in scholarly discourse. The musical innovations developed by medieval women composers encompassed both liturgical music for religious services and secular compositions that entertained aristocratic courts while advancing theoretical understanding of harmonic relationships and melodic structure. Women like Cassia, writing in the 9th century, created hymns that combined theological sophistication with musical innovation, establishing compositional techniques that influenced Byzantine and Western musical traditions for centuries. These musical achievements required mastery of complex theoretical principles, combined with practical understanding of vocal capabilities and instrumental limitations that enabled composers to create works that were both technically challenging and emotionally engaging for performers and audiences. Women composers developed notational systems that preserved their compositions while facilitating performance by musicians who might be separated by vast geographical distances or historical periods. The educational institutions established by women musicians created training programs that transmitted both technical skills and aesthetic principles to future generations of composers and performers. Their teaching methods balanced systematic instruction in musical theory with encouragement of creative expression, producing graduates who could maintain established traditions while contributing original innovations that advanced musical development throughout medieval Europe. The story of Bridget of Sweden's daughter, Catherine, illuminates how medieval women used inherited spiritual authority to establish independent religious movements that addressed contemporary social problems while maintaining connection to traditional Christian teachings. Born around 1331, Catherine combined mystical experience with practical organizational skills that enabled her to create institutional frameworks for charitable work and spiritual guidance that served communities throughout Scandinavia and beyond. Catherine's administrative innovations included comprehensive systems for managing charitable resources, coordinating volunteer activities, and maintaining institutional continuity that enabled her religious communities to survive political upheavals and economic challenges that destroyed less well-organized institutions. Her approaches to community governance balanced individual spiritual development with collective social responsibility, creating balanced models for religious life that influenced monastic development throughout medieval Europe. But the theological contributions developed by Catherine encompassed both preservation of her mother's spiritual teachings and original insights into mystical experience that advanced contemporary understanding of divine human relationships. Her writings combined personal revelation with systematic reflection, creating guides for spiritual development that served both individual seekers and religious communities throughout her extensive networks of influence. The agricultural innovations implemented by medieval women landowners during the later medieval period encompassed both adaptation to climate change and response to demographic shifts that altered labor availability and market demands throughout Europe. Women like Joan de Geneville developed comprehensive estate management strategies that maximized productivity while maintaining environmental sustainability, creating integrated approaches to land use that supported both immediate economic needs and long-term resource conservation. Joan's management of her extensive Irish and English estates demonstrated sophisticated understanding of regional differences in soil conditions, climate patterns, and agricultural techniques that enabled her to optimize production while adapting to local circumstances and cultural preferences. Her innovations in crop selection, livestock breeding, and infrastructure development created models that influenced agricultural practices throughout the British Isles. The technological improvements implemented by medieval women farmers included innovations in ploughing techniques, irrigation systems, and storage facilities that increased productivity while reducing waste and environmental degradation. Their empirical approach to agricultural problem-solving created knowledge that was transmitted through informal networks connecting rural communities across vast geographical distances, enabling successful innovations to spread rapidly throughout regions where they proved beneficial. The story of Christine de Pizan's contemporary, Marie de Berry, reveals how royal women used cultural patronage to support artistic and intellectual development, while advancing political objectives that strengthened their family's dynastic claims and territorial authority. Born around 1367, Marie possessed exceptional aesthetic sensibility combined with political intelligence that enabled her to commission works that served both artistic merit and strategic propaganda purposes throughout her lifetime. Marie's patronage of illuminated manuscripts created some of medieval Europe's most beautiful books, while preserving important texts that might otherwise have been lost during periods of political instability and social disruption. Her commission supported scriptoriums throughout France, while establishing artistic standards that influenced manuscript production for generations of subsequent patrons and producers. The architectural projects sponsored by Marie encompass both practical construction that served immediate needs and symbolic monuments that conveyed messages about royal authority and cultural sophistication to both domestic and international audiences. Her understanding of how artistic patronage could enhance political legitimacy enabled her to create lasting monuments that served multiple purposes, while demonstrating exceptional aesthetic judgment and cultural sophistication. The commercial innovations developed by medieval women merchants during the 15th century encompassed both adaptation to changing market conditions and exploitation of new opportunities created by technological advances and expanded geographical knowledge that characterized the early stages of European exploration and expansion. Women like Margherita d'Attini adapted their business strategies to incorporate new products and markets while developing financial instruments that facilitated increasingly complex international transactions. These commercial developments included early forms of marine insurance, letters of credit, and investment partnerships that enabled merchants to conduct business across vast distances, while managing risks from piracy, warfare, and natural disasters that could destroy entire fortunes overnight. Women entrepreneurs demonstrated particular skill in identifying emerging opportunities while developing business relationships that could adapt to rapidly changing political and economic circumstances. The banking innovations established by women financiers created institutional frameworks that supported commercial expansion while providing essential services for governments and private individuals who required sophisticated financial management. Their understanding of currency relationships, interest calculations, and risk assessment enabled them to create profitable operations while serving broader economic development throughout their regions and beyond. As our peaceful journey through these luminous lives continues to unfold like ancient scrolls revealing their precious secrets, we encounter women whose achievements in cartography and geographical knowledge contributed to the expansion of European understanding about distant lands and peoples that would soon transform global relationships through exploration and cultural exchange. Medieval women possessed intimate knowledge of trade routes, seasonal patterns, and regional characteristics that enabled them to create accurate maps and navigational guides for travelers venturing into unfamiliar territories. The geographical innovations developed by women scholars encompass both theoretical understanding of Earth's physical characteristics and practical knowledge about weather patterns, ocean currents, and seasonal variations that affected successful navigation and commercial transportation. Their contributions to medieval geography provided foundations for the age of exploration, while supporting contemporary trade relationships that connected European markets with distant regions throughout the known world. The linguistic achievements of medieval women during this period encompassed both preservation of ancient languages and development of vernacular literatures that made classical knowledge accessible to broader audiences throughout Europe. Women translators working in courts and monasteries created comprehensive libraries that maintained continuity with Greek and Roman intellectual traditions, while adapting ancient wisdom to contemporary circumstances and cultural contexts. Tonight, as these remarkable stories continue to wash over you like gentle waves carrying ancient wisdom from distant shores to peaceful harbors where weary souls find rest, allow yourself to drift deeper into appreciation for how these medieval women created foundations for human progress through their willingness to challenge limitations while pursuing knowledge and creating beauty. Despite facing obstacles that would have discouraged spirits less determined to leave meaningful legacies for future generations who would inherit possibilities that previous generations fought courageously to establish through intelligence, creativity, and unwavering commitment to improving the world they temporarily inhabited during their brief but influential sojourns through history's unfolding narrative. The story of Marjorie de Montfort reveals how medieval women navigated the treacherous waters of political exile while maintaining influence through carefully cultivated networks that spanned multiple kingdoms. born into one of England's most powerful baronial families around 1252, Marjorie witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of challenging royal authority when her father Simon de Montfort led the baronial rebellion against Henry III that ended in catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Evesham. The aftermath of her family's political downfall forced Marjorie to develop survival strategies that would serve her throughout a lifetime spent rebuilding influence from the ashes of dynastic collapse. Rather than accepting the traditional fate of daughters from defeated noble houses, which typically involved obscure marriages to minor lords or withdrawal into religious life, Marjorie chose a path that required exceptional courage and political intelligence. Her correspondence with sympathetic nobles throughout England and France reveals sophisticated understanding of how political memory could be strategically managed to rehabilitate family reputation while avoiding provocation of royal suspicion. She understood that direct attempts to restore her family's former prominence would invite swift retribution, but patient cultivation of relationships with younger nobles who had not participated in the original conflict could create opportunities for gradual rehabilitation. Marjorie's approach to rebuilding political influence involved careful attention to changing generational attitudes and political circumstances that might create openings for demonstrating loyalty to the crown, while subtly advocating for principles that had motivated her father's rebellion. Her ability to maintain credibility with both reformist sympathizers and royal supporters required diplomatic skills that enabled her to navigate contradictory expectations while building trust across factional divisions. The economic strategies Marjorie employed to support her political activities encompassed both traditional estate management and innovative commercial ventures that generated revenues independent of royal favor or aristocratic patronage. Her involvement in wool trading connected her with merchant networks throughout England and Flanders, providing both income and intelligence about political developments that affected commercial relationships between competing kingdoms. These commercial activities served multiple purposes in Marjorie's broader political strategy, providing legitimate reasons for correspondence and travel that enabled her to maintain relationships with potential allies, while gathering information about changing political circumstances that might affect her family's prospects for rehabilitation. Her success in building profitable business operations demonstrated competence that gradually earned respect from former enemies who began to view her as valuable ally rather than dangerous opponent. The educational initiatives Marjorie supported encompassed both practical training for young nobles and scholarly projects that preserved historical records from the baronial war period that might otherwise have been destroyed or suppressed by royal authorities. Her patronage of chroniclers and legal scholars created comprehensive documentation of constitutional principles that had motivated the reform movement, ensuring that future generations would understand the intellectual foundations for limiting royal authority. These scholarly projects served immediate political purposes by establishing historical precedents that could be cited in future constitutional debates, while also preserving knowledge that would prove essential for subsequent reform movements. Marjorie understood that political ideas required institutional preservation to survive changes in immediate circumstances that might make their advocacy temporarily dangerous or impractical. The story of Isabella de Force illustrates how medieval women used widowhood as an opportunity to exercise unprecedented independence and authority within legal frameworks that typically subordinated female agency to male guardianship. Born around 1237, Isabella inherited vast estates throughout England after her husband's death, making her one of the wealthiest landowners in the kingdom and a significant political figure whose support was actively courted by competing factions. Isabella's approach to managing her inheritance demonstrated remarkable business acumen combined with political intelligence that enabled her to maintain independence while avoiding the forced remarriage that typically befell wealthy widows, whose properties attracted ambitious suitors and royal attention. Her success in resisting pressure to accept new marriage arrangements required careful cultivation of relationships with influential churchmen and legal advisors who could provide protection against unwanted advances. The legal strategies Isabella employed to defend her property rights encompassed both traditional inheritance claims and innovative interpretations of feudal obligations that expanded precedents for female landholding throughout England. Her court cases established important principles about widows' rights and inheritance procedures that influenced legal development for generations, while demonstrating that women could successfully navigate complex judicial processes without male guardianship. Isabella's estate management innovations included comprehensive systems for agricultural production, resource conservation, and tenant relationships that maximized revenues while maintaining popular support among the peasant communities whose labor generated her wealth. Her approach to landlord-tenant relationships balanced profit maximization with social responsibility, creating stable communities that provided reliable income while supporting regional economic development. The architectural projects commissioned by Isabella encompassed both practical construction that served immediate needs and symbolic monuments that demonstrated her cultural sophistication and political importance to contemporary and future audiences. Her castle renovations incorporated innovative defensive features with comfortable living spaces, creating residences that could serve both military and ceremonial functions during periods of political instability. The charitable activities Isabella supported throughout her territories encompassed both traditional religious foundations and innovative social programs that addressed practical problems facing her communities during periods of economic hardship and social disruption. Her establishment of hospitals, schools, and poorhouses created institutional frameworks that provided essential services while demonstrating her commitment to responsible lordship that transcended simple profit extraction. During this same period, the remarkable career of Mahaut d'Artois reveals how medieval women exercised sovereign authority over major territorial principalities, while navigating complex relationships with royal overlords and competing noble claimants who challenged their legitimacy. Born around 1268, Mahaut inherited the county of Artois through controversial circumstances that would generate decades of legal disputes and political conflict requiring exceptional diplomatic skill to manage successfully. Mahaut's approach to territorial governance combined traditional feudal practices with innovative administrative procedures that enhanced both efficiency and popular support throughout her domains. Her judicial reforms created more accessible legal procedures, while her economic policies encouraged commercial development and agricultural innovation that increased regional prosperity and strengthened her political position against hostile neighbors and royal interference. The military capabilities Mahaut developed to defend her territories encompassed both professional forces and popular militias that could respond rapidly to external threats while maintaining internal security during periods of political instability. Her understanding of military logistics and strategic planning enabled her to coordinate defensive operations across multiple frontiers while maintaining offensive capabilities that deterred potential aggressors. Mahaut's diplomatic relationships with neighboring rulers required careful balance between assertive defense of territorial rights and pragmatic accommodation of competing claims that could be resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Her correspondence reveals sophisticated understanding of international law and dynastic relationships that enabled her to build coalitions supporting her position, while isolating opponents who might otherwise have coordinated attacks against her authority. The cultural patronage provided by Mahaut encompassed both preservation of traditional artistic forms and encouragement of innovative approaches that reflected contemporary intellectual and aesthetic developments throughout Europe. Her court attracted scholars, artists, and musicians whose work contributed to broader cultural movements while creating monuments that enhanced her political legitimacy and demonstrated her sophisticated understanding of how cultural achievement could reinforce political authority. The story of Agnes Hotto illuminates the extraordinary circumstances that occasionally enabled medieval women to participate directly in military combat while maintaining social respectability and family honor. According to contemporary chronicles, Agnes assumed her father's armor and identity to fulfill feudal obligations for military service, when illness prevented him from responding to royal summons for campaign duty during the early 14th century. Agnes's successful deception during actual combat operations demonstrates remarkable physical courage combined with tactical intelligence that enabled her to function effectively in the most demanding military environment while concealing her true identity from fellow knights and military commanders. Her ability to maintain this masquerade throughout extended campaign operations required not just martial skill, but comprehensive understanding of male military culture and behavioral expectations. The revelation of Agnes's true identity, which reportedly occurred only after she had distinguished herself in battle and earned recognition from royal commanders, created unprecedented circumstances that challenged traditional assumptions about female capabilities while establishing precedents that would influence subsequent discussions about women's potential military contributions throughout medieval Europe. The legal and social implications of Agnes's military service encompassed both immediate questions about feudal obligation fulfillment and broader issues about gender roles and social expectations that affected how medieval society understood women's capabilities and proper spheres of activity. Her case established precedents that would be cited in subsequent legal disputes about inheritance obligations and military service requirements that affected other families throughout England. The educational achievements of medieval women during the 14th century encompassed both formal institutional learning and informal knowledge acquisition that enabled them to participate effectively in intellectual movements that were transforming European approaches to scholarship, philosophy, and cultural production. Women like Battista da Montefeltro received comprehensive educations that included classical languages, mathematical sciences, and philosophical training that prepared them for leadership roles in both secular and religious contexts. Battista's intellectual development encompassed mastery of Latin and Greek literature, combined with original contributions to contemporary philosophical debates about governance, ethics, and social organization that demonstrated reasoning capabilities that challenged conventional assumptions about female intellectual potential. Her public orations and written treatises established her reputation throughout Italy as a serious thinker, whose contributions merited attention from leading scholars and political figures. The pedagogical innovations Battista developed in her role as educator encompassed both traditional instructional methods and experimental approaches that emphasized critical thinking and original analysis rather than simple memorization of established authorities. Her teaching influenced educational practices throughout northern Italy, while producing graduates who contributed to broader intellectual movements that were reshaping European culture and society. The correspondence networks maintained by educated medieval women created intellectual communities that transcended geographical boundaries and facilitated exchange of ideas and information that supported scholarly development throughout Europe. These letters reveal sophisticated understanding of contemporary intellectual debates combined with original insights that advance knowledge across multiple disciplines while demonstrating the collaborative nature of medieval intellectual culture. The astronomical observations recorded by women scholars during this period contributed to improved understanding of celestial mechanics and calendar systems that enhanced both practical applications like navigation and agricultural planning, and theoretical knowledge that advanced mathematical and philosophical understanding of cosmic order and natural law that influenced medieval worldview development. As we continue our gentle journey through these luminous medieval lives, the story of Constanza de Castilla emerges as testament to how royal women navigated the complex relationships between dynastic obligation and personal agency during periods of political upheaval that tested traditional assumptions about female authority and political participation. Born around 1354, Constanza possessed exceptional political intelligence that enabled her to maintain influence despite exile and family conflicts that destroyed many contemporary noble houses. Constanza's approach to maintaining political relevance during extended exile required sophisticated understanding of international relationships and dynastic claims that could be leveraged to create opportunities for restoration, while building support networks that could sustain her family's interests across multiple kingdoms. Her correspondence with potential allies reveals deep knowledge of genealogical relationships and territorial claims that could provide legal foundations for future political rehabilitation. The marriage negotiations Constanza conducted on behalf of her children encompassed both immediate strategic considerations and long-term dynastic planning that could restore her family's political importance while creating alliance networks that would provide security against future political reversals. Her success in arranging advantageous marriages, despite her exile, demonstrates remarkable diplomatic skill and understanding of how royal marriages could serve multiple political purposes simultaneously. The cultural activities Constanza supported during her exile served both immediate purposes of maintaining aristocratic lifestyle and long-term objectives of preserving family reputation and cultural sophistication that could support future restoration efforts. Her patronage of artists and scholars created positive associations that enhanced her family's image, while providing employment opportunities that built loyalty networks extending beyond immediate political supporters. The story of Philippa of Lancaster reveals how medieval queen consorts used their positions to influence policy development while managing complex relationships between competing national interests that could affect both immediate political stability and long-term dynastic security. Born around 1360, Philippa possessed exceptional diplomatic skills that enabled her to serve as effective intermediary between English and Portuguese interests while maintaining credibility with both kingdoms' political establishments. Philippa's role in Portuguese court politics encompassed both traditional ceremonial functions and substantive policy involvement that addressed economic development, military planning, and diplomatic relationships that affected Portugal's ability to maintain independence, while pursuing territorial expansion in North Africa and Atlantic exploration that would eventually transform global relationships and commercial patterns. The educational programs Philippa established for her children combined traditional aristocratic training with innovative approaches that prepared them for leadership roles in an increasingly complex international environment, where successful governance required both military capabilities and sophisticated understanding of commercial, diplomatic, and cultural relationships that connected distant regions and peoples. The economic policies Philippa advocated encompassed both traditional approaches to resource management and experimental initiatives that encouraged commercial innovation and technological development that enhanced Portuguese capabilities while creating new sources of revenue that supported expanded governmental activities and territorial ambitions throughout the Atlantic region. The architectural projects commissioned by Philippa served both practical needs for improved royal residences and symbolic purposes that demonstrated Portuguese cultural sophistication and political stability to both domestic and international audiences. Her building programs created lasting monuments that enhanced royal prestige while providing employment opportunities that supported regional economic development and artisan communities throughout her territories. Tonight, as these stories continue to unfold like precious illuminated manuscripts revealing their golden secrets in flickering candlelight, allow yourself to appreciate how these remarkable women created foundations for human progress through their willingness to challenge limitations while pursuing excellence in every sphere of medieval life, demonstrating that extraordinary individuals could transcend the constraints of their historical circumstances through intelligence, determination, and unwavering commitment to creating better possibilities for the communities and civilizations they served during their transformative lifetimes, leaving legacies that continue to inspire and inform our understanding of human potential and the endless capacity for growth that defines our species' remarkable journey through the unfolding tapestry of recorded history. The 15th century witnessed unprecedented expansion of women's influence in international commerce as trade routes extended beyond traditional European boundaries to encompass new territories and exotic goods that transformed both economic relationships and cultural understanding throughout the medieval world. Women merchants like Caterina Sforza developed comprehensive trading operations that connected Italian manufacturing centers with markets throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, while pioneering innovative financial instruments that facilitated complex international transactions. Katerina's commercial networks required mastery of multiple languages, currencies, and legal systems that enabled her to navigate the intricate web of political relationships and commercial regulations that governed trade between competing kingdoms and city-states. Her correspondence reveals sophisticated understanding of market dynamics, seasonal patterns, and political developments that could affect commodity prices and transportation routes, enabling her to anticipate profitable opportunities while avoiding costly disruptions that destroyed less informed competitors. The banking innovations Katerina implemented included early forms of international credit systems that enabled merchants to conduct business across vast distances without transporting dangerous quantities of precious metals or coins. Her financial institutions provided essential services for both commercial enterprises and governmental operations that required sophisticated monetary management, creating economic infrastructure that supported broader regional development while generating substantial profits that could be reinvested in expanded operations. The technological improvements Katerina sponsored encompassed both enhanced production techniques and innovative transportation systems that increased efficiency while maintaining quality standards that enabled Italian goods to compete successfully in international markets. Her investments in harbour facilities, road construction, and communication networks created comprehensive infrastructure that served multiple commercial enterprises while demonstrating her understanding of how individual business success depended on broader economic development. The story of Anne de Beaujeu illuminates how medieval women exercised regency authority during royal minorities while managing complex political coalitions that included competing noble factions, foreign governments, and emerging merchant classes whose interests often conflicted with traditional aristocratic priorities. Born around 1461, Anne possessed exceptional political intelligence that enabled her to maintain stability during her brother's minority while implementing reforms that strengthened royal authority and enhanced governmental effectiveness. Anne's approach to regency governance combined respect for traditional feudal relationships with innovative administrative procedures that improved tax collection, judicial administration, and military organization throughout France. Her reforms created more efficient governmental systems while maintaining popular support through careful attention to regional interests and local customs that could be accommodated within broader frameworks for centralized coordination and policy implementation. The diplomatic relationships Anne maintained with neighboring kingdoms required careful balance between assertive defense of French interests and pragmatic accommodation of competing claims that could be resolved through negotiation rather than costly warfare. Her correspondence with foreign courts reveals sophisticated understanding of international law and dynastic relationships that enabled her to build coalitions supporting French positions while isolating potential enemies who might otherwise coordinate attacks against royal authority. Anne's military reforms encompassed both professional army development and popular militia organization that created comprehensive defense capabilities while supporting offensive operations that could protect French territories and advance national interests throughout Europe. Her understanding of military logistics, strategic planning, and tactical coordination enabled French forces to maintain readiness while adapting to changing technologies and battlefield conditions that characterized late medieval warfare. The cultural patronage Anne provided encompassed both traditional artistic forms and innovative approaches that reflected contemporary intellectual developments throughout Europe, while demonstrating French cultural sophistication to international audiences. Her court attracted scholars, artists, and musicians whose work contributed to broader Renaissance movements, while creating monuments that enhanced royal prestige and demonstrated effective governance through cultural achievement. During this period, the remarkable achievements of women in mathematical and astronomical sciences often remained hidden within religious institutions that provided unique opportunities for systematic observation and theoretical development that advanced human understanding of natural phenomena. Women scholars working in monasteries and courts maintained comprehensive records of celestial movements, seasonal patterns, and mathematical relationships that supported both practical applications and theoretical investigations. The astronomical calculations performed by these women scholars enabled more accurate calendar systems that improved agricultural planning, religious observances, and commercial scheduling throughout medieval Europe. Their observations of planetary motion, eclipse patterns, and stellar relationships created knowledge bases that supported navigation, timekeeping, and theoretical understanding of cosmic order that influenced broader intellectual developments during the transition toward Renaissance scientific methods. The mathematical innovations developed by medieval women encompass both practical computation techniques and theoretical investigations into numerical relationships that advanced understanding of geometric principles, algebraic methods, and arithmetic procedures. Their work in monastic scriptoriums created educational materials that transmitted mathematical knowledge to future generations while solving real-world problems that faced their communities during periods of economic and social transition. The story of Caterina Cornaro reveals how medieval women navigated the complex relationships between personal autonomy and political obligation, when inherited or acquired authority created opportunities for independent governance that challenged traditional expectations about female political participation. Born around 1454, Caterina possessed exceptional diplomatic skills that enabled her to maintain sovereignty over Cyprus, while managing pressure from competing powers who sought to control the strategically important island kingdom. Caterina's approach to territorial governance combined traditional monarchical practices with innovative administrative procedures that enhanced both efficiency and popular support throughout her domains. Her judicial reforms created more accessible legal procedures, while her economic policies encouraged commercial development that increased regional prosperity and strengthened her political position against external threats and internal challenges to her authority. The commercial relationships Caterina developed with Italian city-states and Eastern Mediterranean trading partners created economic networks that supported Cypriot independence while providing revenues necessary for maintaining military capabilities and governmental operations. Her understanding of international trade patterns and financial management enabled her to negotiate favorable agreements that balanced immediate needs with long-term strategic considerations. Caterina's cultural patronage encompassed both preservation of traditional artistic forms and encouragement of innovative approaches that demonstrated Cypriot cultural sophistication while attracting international attention and support. Her court became a center for intellectual exchange that connected Western European and Eastern Mediterranean traditions, creating unique cultural synthesis that influenced broader artistic and scholarly developments. The architectural projects commissioned by Caterina served both practical defensive needs and symbolic purposes that demonstrated royal authority and cultural achievement to both domestic and international audiences. Her building programs created lasting monuments that enhanced royal prestige, while providing employment opportunities that supported regional economic development and maintained popular loyalty during periods of external pressure. The medical achievements of late medieval women encompassed both traditional healing practices and innovative therapeutic approaches that incorporated new knowledge gained through expanded international contacts and systematic observation of disease processes and treatment outcomes. Women physicians working in urban centers developed comprehensive diagnostic procedures and pharmaceutical preparations that achieved remarkable success rates given available resources and technological limitations. The surgical techniques developed by medieval women practitioners included innovative approaches to traumatic injury treatment, obstetrical complications, and chronic disease management that saved countless lives while advancing medical understanding throughout Europe. Their empirical methods of observation and experimentation created knowledge that would influence medical development for centuries, while providing immediate benefits to communities that might otherwise have lacked access to professional healthcare. The pharmaceutical innovations created by women healers encompassed both traditional herbal remedies and experimental compounds that utilized newly available ingredients from expanded trade networks, connecting Europe with distant regions. Their understanding of drug interactions, dosage calculations, and patient monitoring created safer and more effective therapeutic approaches that demonstrated sophisticated grasp of medical principles centuries before formal scientific methods would provide theoretical explanations for observed phenomena. The educational institutions established by medieval women physicians created training programs that transmitted both practical skills and theoretical knowledge to future generations of healers, while encouraging original research that advanced medical understanding. Their teaching methods combined systematic instruction with hands-on experience, producing graduates who could maintain established therapeutic traditions while contributing innovations that addressed contemporary health challenges. The story of Isabella I of Castile represents the culmination of medieval women's political achievement as she transformed regional authority into comprehensive national governance that would reshape European and global relationships for centuries. Born around 1451, Isabella possessed exceptional strategic vision combined with practical administrative skills that enabled her to unify fragmented territories while implementing reforms that strengthened royal authority and enhanced governmental effectiveness throughout her expanding domains. Isabella's approach to territorial unification encompassed both military conquest and diplomatic negotiation that created stable political relationships while maintaining respect for regional traditions and local customs that could be accommodated within broader frameworks for centralized governance. Her success in coordinating diverse populations and competing interests demonstrated remarkable political intelligence that transcended immediate tactical considerations to encompass long-term strategic planning. The religious policies Isabella implemented served both spiritual objectives and practical political purposes that enhanced royal authority while addressing popular concerns about moral leadership and social justice. Her support for ecclesiastical reform created more effective religious institutions, while her approach to religious minorities balanced traditional Catholic doctrine with pragmatic considerations about economic productivity and social stability. Isabella's economic reforms encompassed both traditional approaches to resource management and innovative initiatives that encouraged commercial development and technological advancement throughout her territories. Her policies supported agricultural expansion, manufacturing growth, and international trade relationships that generated revenues necessary for expanded governmental activities while improving living conditions for broad segments of her population. The exploration initiatives Isabella sponsored represented unprecedented expansion of European geographical knowledge and commercial relationships that would transform global civilization for centuries. Her support for Atlantic voyages demonstrated remarkable strategic vision, combined with willingness to invest substantial resources in speculative ventures that promised extraordinary returns while creating new opportunities for territorial expansion and cultural exchange. As our peaceful journey through these extraordinary medieval lives continues to unfold like ancient tapestries, revealing their intricate patterns thread by thread, we encounter women whose achievements in legal scholarship and judicial administration created foundations for systematic approaches to justice that balanced individual rights with community welfare, while maintaining social stability during periods of rapid change and cultural transformation. The legal innovations developed by medieval women judges encompassed both theoretical jurisprudence and practical court procedures that enhanced both fairness and efficiency in dispute resolution, while establishing precedents that would influence legal development throughout Europe. Their decisions demonstrated sophisticated understanding of both written law and customary practices that could be synthesized to create more comprehensive approaches to justice that served diverse populations and competing interests. The scholarly contributions made by women legal experts included comprehensive commentaries on existing legal codes, combined with original analyses of jurisdictional questions and procedural issues that advanced understanding of how legal systems could adapt to changing social conditions while maintaining continuity with established principles. Their work created intellectual foundations for later legal developments, while providing practical guidance for contemporary practitioners and judicial officials. Tonight, as these luminous stories continue to wash over you like gentle streams carrying wisdom from distant mountains to peaceful valleys where weary souls find restoration, remember that each remarkable woman we have encountered represents countless others whose courage, intelligence, and determination created the foundations for human progress that we continue to build upon today, demonstrating that individual excellence can transcend historical limitations while creating possibilities that inspire future generations to pursue their own extraordinary contributions to our shared journey through time's unfolding mystery. The story of Margarita Gonzaga reveals how 15th century women transformed artistic patronage into sophisticated cultural diplomacy that influenced international relationships while establishing aesthetic standards that would define Renaissance artistic development. Born around 1418 into one of Italy's most influential ruling families, Margherita possessed exceptional aesthetic judgment, combined with political acumen, that enabled her to use cultural commissions as vehicles for advancing dynastic interests and territorial ambitions. Her approach to artistic patronage encompassed both preservation of traditional forms and encouragement of innovative techniques that pushed creative boundaries while maintaining connection to established aesthetic principles. The painters, sculptors, and architects she supported created works that served multiple purposes simultaneously, providing visual pleasure while conveying complex political messages about power, legitimacy, and cultural sophistication to audiences throughout Europe. Margherita's correspondence with artists reveals deep understanding of creative processes, combined with practical knowledge of materials, techniques, and production timelines that enabled her to coordinate complex projects while maintaining quality standards that established her court as a center of artistic excellence. Her ability to balance artistic vision with budgetary constraints demonstrated administrative skills that supported broader governmental effectiveness, while creating lasting cultural monuments. The musical innovations sponsored by Margherita encompassed both secular compositions for court entertainment and sacred works that enhanced religious observances while demonstrating the cultural sophistication that reinforced her family's political authority. Her patronage of composers and performers created musical traditions that influenced European cultural development, while providing entertainment that strengthened diplomatic relationships and social cohesion within her territories. The architectural projects commissioned by Margherita served both practical residential needs and symbolic purposes that communicated messages about power and cultural achievement to contemporary and future audiences. Her building programs incorporated innovative engineering solutions with aesthetic principles that created structures combining functional efficiency with visual magnificence, establishing architectural standards that would influence construction throughout northern Italy. During this same period, the remarkable career of Bianca Maria Visconti illuminates how medieval women used marriage negotiations as opportunities for comprehensive diplomatic engagement that addressed territorial disputes, commercial relationships, and dynastic succession, while advancing personal and family interests through carefully orchestrated political alliances that could reshape regional power balances. Born around 1425, Bianca Maria possessed exceptional diplomatic intelligence that enabled her to navigate complex negotiations involving multiple competing interests while maintaining credibility with all parties, despite representing positions that sometimes conflicted with their immediate objectives. Her success in coordinating different diplomatic initiatives demonstrated political sophistication that transcended traditional expectations about female participation in international relations. The treaty negotiations Bianca Maria conducted encompassed both immediate territorial adjustments and long-term strategic arrangements that created stable political relationships, while providing frameworks for peaceful resolution of future disputes that might otherwise escalate into costly warfare. Her understanding of legal precedents and diplomatic protocol enabled her to craft agreements that satisfied multiple parties while establishing principles that would influence subsequent international relationships. Bianca Maria's approach to commercial diplomacy combined traditional concerns about territorial security with innovative attention to trade relationships and economic development that could provide sustainable foundations for political stability. Her negotiations addressed customs regulations, currency exchange procedures, and transportation infrastructure that supported commercial expansion while generating revenues necessary for governmental operations and military preparedness. The cultural exchanges facilitated by Bianca Maria's diplomatic activities encompass both artistic collaborations and scholarly communications that created intellectual networks connecting different regions and traditions. Her court became a center for cultural synthesis that combined diverse influences while maintaining distinctive characteristics that demonstrated the unique contributions her territories could make to broader European civilization. The story of Lucrezia Tornabuoni reveals how educated women used literary creation as vehicles for political commentary and social analysis, while entertaining audiences with sophisticated narratives that combined entertainment value with serious intellectual content. Born around 1427, Lucrezia received comprehensive humanist education that enabled her to master classical languages and literary forms, while developing original approaches to creative expression that addressed contemporary concerns through allegorical and historical narratives. Her poetic works demonstrated remarkable technical skill, combined with deep understanding of classical literature and contemporary political developments that enabled her to create compositions that functioned simultaneously as artistic achievements and subtle political commentary. The religious themes she explored provided opportunities for discussing moral and ethical questions that had immediate relevance for contemporary governance and social relationships. Lucrezia's correspondence with other intellectuals throughout Italy reveals her participation in broader humanist movements that were transforming European approaches to education, scholarship, and cultural production. Her letters demonstrate sophisticated understanding of philosophical and theological questions, combined with practical wisdom about human psychology and social dynamics that informed her literary creations while establishing her reputation as a serious thinker. The educational initiatives Lucrezia supported encompass both traditional classical instruction and innovative approaches that emphasized critical thinking and original analysis, rather than simple memorization of established authorities. Her influence on educational practices extended beyond immediate family circles to encompass broader networks of scholars and students who carried her pedagogical innovations throughout Italy and beyond. The manuscript collections preserved and expanded by Lucrezia created comprehensive libraries that serve both immediate scholarly needs and long-term preservation of intellectual traditions that might otherwise have been lost during periods of political instability and social disruption. Her efforts to maintain and transmit written knowledge demonstrated understanding of how intellectual continuity required institutional support and systematic preservation efforts. The remarkable achievements of Caterina Sforza in military leadership and territorial defense demonstrate how exceptional circumstances could enable medieval women to exercise direct command authority while maintaining social respectability and political legitimacy. Born around 1463, Caterina possessed extraordinary courage combined with strategic intelligence that enabled her to coordinate complex defensive operations, while inspiring loyalty among professional soldiers who might otherwise have questioned female military authority. Her approach to fortress defense encompassed both traditional siege warfare techniques and innovative tactical adaptations that exploited specific geographical and technological advantages, while maintaining flexibility to respond to changing battlefield conditions. The military reforms she implemented improved coordination between different types of units while enhancing overall defensive capabilities that protected her territories against sustained attack by superior forces. Katerina's understanding of military logistics enabled her to maintain adequate supplies and equipment during extended sieges, while coordinating intelligence networks that provided essential information about enemy movements and strategic intentions. Her ability to manage complex supply chains and communication systems demonstrated administrative capabilities that supported effective military command while maintaining civilian support necessary for sustained resistance. The diplomatic initiatives Katerina pursued during military conflicts combined negotiation with demonstration of strength that created opportunities for favorable settlements while avoiding unnecessary casualties and destruction. Her correspondence with enemy commanders reveals sophisticated understanding of military psychology and political calculation that enabled her to achieve strategic objectives through combination of force and persuasion. The technological innovations Katerina implemented in fortress design and artillery deployment reflected her understanding of how changing military technology required adaptive defensive strategies that could counter new offensive capabilities while maintaining traditional advantages. Her investments in improved fortifications and weapons systems created defensive capabilities that enabled successful resistance against numerically superior attackers. During the late 15th century, the story of Anne of Brittany emerges as testament to how female sovereigns navigated the complex relationships between inherited authority and political marriage while maintaining territorial independence despite pressure from more powerful neighbors seeking to absorb their domains through diplomatic or military means. Born around 1477, Anne possessed exceptional political intelligence that enabled her to preserve Breton autonomy while managing competing claims from French and Habsburg suitors. Anne's approach to marriage negotiations encompassed both immediate strategic considerations and long-term planning that could preserve territorial integrity while creating beneficial alliances that would provide security against future threats. Her success in maintaining negotiating leverage despite military pressure demonstrated remarkable diplomatic skill combined with understanding of how symbolic authority could be preserved, even when practical independence required accommodation with stronger powers. The administrative reforms Anne implemented throughout Brittany created more efficient governmental systems, while preserving traditional institutions and customs that maintained popular support for ducal authority. Her policies balanced modernization with respect for regional identity, creating governmental effectiveness that demonstrated successful independent rule, while providing models that could be adapted by other territories facing similar pressures. Anne's cultural patronage served both immediate purposes of maintaining aristocratic lifestyle and long-term objectives of preserving Breton cultural distinctiveness that reinforced arguments for continued political autonomy. Her support for literature, art, and architecture created monuments that celebrated regional traditions while demonstrating the cultural sophistication that justified independent governance. The economic policies Anne pursued encompassed both traditional approaches to resource management and innovative initiatives that enhanced commercial development, while generating revenues necessary for maintaining governmental operations and military preparedness. Her understanding of trade relationships and fiscal management enabled Brittany to maintain economic viability despite political pressures that threatened to undermine territorial independence. The story of Margaret of Austria illuminates how Regency authority enabled exceptional women to exercise comprehensive governmental power, while managing complex international relationships that required balancing competing dynastic interests with broader strategic considerations affecting European political stability. Born around 1480, Margaret possessed remarkable political sophistication that enabled her to coordinate multiple diplomatic initiatives while maintaining domestic stability during periods of dynastic transition. Her approach to Regency governance combined respect for existing institutional arrangements with innovative administrative procedures that enhanced governmental effectiveness while building consensus among competing political factions. The reforms she implemented created more efficient systems for tax collection, judicial administration, and military organization, while maintaining popular support through careful attention to regional concerns and local customs. Margaret's diplomatic relationships with neighboring powers required sophisticated understanding of dynastic claims, territorial disputes, and commercial interests that could be leveraged to create mutually beneficial agreements while avoiding costly conflicts that might destabilize her regency authority. Her correspondence reveals deep knowledge of European political dynamics, combined with practical wisdom about negotiation strategies and alliance management. The cultural initiatives Margaret sponsored encompassed both traditional artistic patronage and innovative educational programs that enhanced regional cultural development while demonstrating effective governance through cultural achievement. Her court attracted scholars, artists, and intellectuals whose work contributed to broader Renaissance movements while creating intellectual networks that supported diplomatic and commercial relationships throughout Europe. The architectural projects commissioned by Margaret served both practical governmental needs and symbolic purposes that demonstrated effective rule while creating lasting monuments to successful Regency administration. Her building programs provided employment opportunities that supported regional economic development, while creating structures that enhanced governmental functionality and ceremonial authority. The medical advances achieved by women practitioners during the late medieval period encompassed both theoretical innovations and practical therapeutic developments that addressed health challenges created by urban growth, dietary changes, and new disease patterns that emerged as European society evolved toward early modern configurations. Women physicians working in major cities developed comprehensive treatment protocols that integrated traditional remedies with experimental approaches, utilizing newly available materials and techniques. The surgical innovations developed by these medical practitioners included advanced procedures for treating traumatic injuries, managing childbirth complications, and addressing chronic conditions that had previously been considered untreatable. Their empirical approaches to understanding disease processes and therapeutic interventions created knowledge bases that influenced medical development throughout Europe, while providing immediate benefits for patients who might otherwise have lacked access to effective healthcare. The pharmaceutical preparations created by women healers during this period incorporated exotic ingredients obtained through expanded international trade networks, while maintaining traditional formulations that had proven effective over generations of practical application. Their understanding of drug interactions, dosage calculations, and patient monitoring created therapeutic approaches that achieved remarkable success rates while minimizing adverse effects and complications. The educational institutions established by women medical practitioners created comprehensive training programs that transmitted both theoretical knowledge and practical skills to future generations of healers, while encouraging original research that advanced understanding of human anatomy, disease processes, and therapeutic principles. Their teaching methods combined systematic instruction with hands-on clinical experience, producing graduates who could maintain established medical traditions while contributing innovations that addressed contemporary health challenges. The story of Vittoria Colonna represents the culmination of Renaissance women's literary achievement as she transformed personal experience into universal artistic expression that influenced European cultural development while establishing new standards for poetic excellence and intellectual sophistication. Born around 1490, Vittoria possessed exceptional literary talent combined with comprehensive classical education that enabled her to create works that functioned simultaneously as artistic achievements and profound intellectual contributions to contemporary philosophical and theological discourse. Her poetic compositions demonstrated remarkable technical mastery, combined with emotional depth, that created new possibilities for expressing complex psychological and spiritual states through literary language. The themes she explored encompassed both personal experiences of love and loss, and universal questions about human nature, divine relationship, and moral obligation that resonated with readers throughout Europe, while establishing her reputation as one of the period's most significant literary figures. Vittoria's correspondence with leading intellectuals reveals her participation in broader humanist movements, while demonstrating original contributions to contemporary debates about education, governance, and social organization. Her letters combine personal warmth with intellectual rigor, creating documents that provide insights into both individual personality and broader cultural developments that characterize the transition from medieval to early modern European civilization. The philosophical investigations Vittoria pursued through both literary creation and scholarly correspondence encompassed questions about the relationship between individual experience and universal truth that would influence European intellectual development for centuries. Her approaches to integrating classical wisdom with Christian doctrine created synthetic frameworks that addressed contemporary spiritual and intellectual needs while maintaining continuity with established traditions. The cultural networks Vittoria created through her literary activities and personal relationships connected diverse intellectual communities throughout Italy and beyond, facilitating exchange of ideas and artistic techniques that enriched European cultural development while demonstrating how individual excellence could contribute to broader civilizational advancement. Her influence extended far beyond immediate literary circles to encompass broader movements for educational reform and cultural innovation that would reshape European society. As our gentle journey through these luminous medieval lives continues to unfold like precious scrolls, revealing their golden wisdom in the quiet hours before dawn, we encounter women whose achievements in natural philosophy and mathematical sciences laid essential groundwork for systematic approaches to understanding physical phenomena that would eventually develop into modern scientific methodology, demonstrating how patient observation combined with theoretical reflection could advance human knowledge even within institutional frameworks that provided limited support for experimental investigation. The botanical investigations conducted by these women scholars encompassed both practical applications for medical and agricultural purposes and theoretical inquiries into plant physiology and environmental relationships that advanced understanding of natural processes while providing immediate benefits for their communities. Their systematic observations of growth patterns, seasonal variations, and environmental requirements created comprehensive knowledge bases that supported both practical applications and theoretical understanding of biological principles. The astronomical calculations performed by women working in monastic and court settings enabled more accurate predictions of celestial events, while contributing to improved calendar systems that enhanced agricultural planning, religious observances, and commercial scheduling throughout medieval Europe. Their mathematical innovations in computational techniques and theoretical analysis created tools that would influence both practical applications and scholarly investigations for generations. Tonight, as these remarkable stories continue to wash over you like gentle streams carrying ancient wisdom from distant peaks to peaceful valleys where weary souls find restoration and renewal, allow yourself to appreciate how these extraordinary women transformed the constraints of their historical circumstances into opportunities for achievement that continue to inspire our understanding of human potential and the endless capacity for growth that defines our species' remarkable journey through the unfolding narrative of civilization, leaving legacies that remind us how individual excellence can transcend temporary limitations while creating lasting contributions to the shared treasure house of human knowledge and cultural achievement that connects all generations in the eternal quest for truth, beauty, and meaningful existence. The legacy of medieval women's astronomical achievements extended far beyond practical calendar calculations to encompass profound theoretical investigations into the nature of celestial motion and cosmic order that would influence European intellectual development for centuries. Women scholars working in monastic scriptoriums developed sophisticated mathematical models for predicting planetary positions while maintaining detailed observational records that revealed patterns and relationships invisible to casual observers of the night sky. Sister Adelheid of Regensburg exemplified this tradition of systematic celestial observation through her decades of meticulous record-keeping that documented lunar phases, planetary conjunctions, and stellar movements with unprecedented precision. Her calculations enabled accurate prediction of eclipses and seasonal changes, while contributing to theoretical understanding of astronomical cycles that affected everything from agricultural planning to religious festival scheduling throughout the Holy Roman Empire. The mathematical innovations Adelheid developed to support her astronomical work included advanced computational techniques for handling complex calculations involving circular motion and angular measurements. Her methods for converting between different calendar systems and coordinate frameworks created practical tools that enabled other scholars to build upon her observations while maintaining accuracy across extended time periods and geographical distances. Adelheid's correspondence with scholars throughout Europe reveals sophisticated understanding of Greek and Islamic astronomical traditions, combined with original insights derived from her own systematic observations. She translated and commented upon classical astronomical texts while developing new theoretical frameworks that integrated ancient wisdom with contemporary observations, creating synthetic approaches to celestial mechanics that anticipated later scientific developments by centuries. The educational programs Adelheid established within her monastery created comprehensive training in mathematical and astronomical sciences that produced generations of women scholars capable of continuing and expanding her observational work. Her teaching methods emphasized both theoretical understanding and practical observational skills, ensuring that students could maintain established traditions while contributing original research that advanced collective knowledge of celestial phenomena. During this same period, the remarkable story of Euphemia of Kiev illuminates how Byzantine women navigated the complex relationships between religious authority and political power, while maintaining cultural traditions that preserved essential knowledge during periods of political upheaval and territorial fragmentation. Born around 1160, Euphemia possessed exceptional diplomatic skills that enabled her to coordinate relationships between competing Orthodox and Catholic religious authorities while maintaining cultural autonomy for her people. Euphemia's approach to religious diplomacy encompassed both theological sophistication and practical understanding of how doctrinal differences could be managed through careful attention to ceremonial details and symbolic gestures that satisfied competing authorities, while preserving essential spiritual traditions. Her negotiations with papal legates and patriarchal representatives created frameworks for religious cooperation that enabled cultural preservation despite political pressures toward religious uniformity. The educational initiatives Euphemia supported encompassed both traditional Orthodox theological training and innovative approaches to preserving Slavonic literary traditions that might otherwise have been suppressed by Western European cultural influence. Her patronage of scriptoriums and libraries created institutional frameworks for maintaining linguistic and cultural distinctiveness while facilitating intellectual exchange with broader European scholarly communities. Euphemia's cultural preservation efforts included systematic collection and copying of historical chronicles, religious texts, and folkloric materials that documented the unique traditions of her people, while creating comprehensive archives that would serve future generations seeking to understand their cultural heritage. Her understanding of how political pressure could threaten cultural continuity motivated comprehensive preservation efforts that anticipated future needs for cultural documentation and transmission. The diplomatic correspondence Euphemia maintained with religious and secular authorities throughout Eastern Europe reveals sophisticated understanding of how theological disputes intersected with political conflicts, while demonstrating practical wisdom about negotiation strategies that could achieve acceptable compromises without sacrificing essential principles or cultural identity. Her success in maintaining religious autonomy while avoiding open conflict required exceptional political intelligence combined with deep spiritual conviction. The story of Herod of Landsberg demonstrates how medieval women used encyclopedic compilation to preserve and organize vast amounts of knowledge while creating educational resources that made complex information accessible to diverse audiences throughout Europe. Born around 1130, Herod possessed extraordinary scholarly dedication that enabled her to coordinate comprehensive intellectual projects requiring decades of sustained effort and collaboration with multiple contributors. Her masterwork, the Hortus Deliciarum, or Garden of Delights, represented unprecedented synthesis of classical learning, contemporary scholarship, and original artistic creation that encompassed theology, natural philosophy, history, and practical knowledge within comprehensive frameworks designed to support both individual study and institutional teaching. The work's combination of textual content with detailed illustrations created multimedia educational resources that engaged multiple learning styles while maintaining intellectual rigor. Herod's approach to knowledge organization demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how information could be structured to facilitate both systematic study and practical application. Her editorial methods balanced comprehensiveness with accessibility, creating reference works that served both scholarly research and popular education while maintaining accuracy and intellectual integrity throughout extensive compilation processes. The collaborative networks Herod established to support her encyclopedic projects encompass scholars, artists, and scribes throughout the Rhine Valley, whose coordinated efforts created intellectual resources that individual scholars could not have produced independently. Her ability to coordinate complex collaborative projects while maintaining editorial control and intellectual coherence demonstrated administrative skills that enabled unprecedented scholarly achievement. The pedagogical innovations Herod incorporated into her encyclopedic works included visual elements, cross-references, and organizational structures that enhanced learning effectiveness, while creating educational resources that could serve multiple institutional contexts and educational objectives. Her understanding of how different types of learners required different approaches to complex material created educational tools that remained valuable for generations of students and teachers. The agricultural innovations developed by medieval women during the 13th century encompassed both practical improvements to farming techniques and theoretical understanding of soil management and crop relationships that increased productivity while maintaining environmental sustainability. Women managing monastic estates and family properties developed comprehensive approaches to land use that balanced immediate needs with long-term conservation, creating models for sustainable agriculture that supported population growth throughout medieval Europe. Abbess Kunigunde of Gernrode exemplified this tradition of agricultural innovation through her systematic approach to estate management that integrated crop rotation, livestock breeding, and infrastructure development within comprehensive planning frameworks that maximize productivity while preserving soil fertility and preventing environmental degradation. Her innovations in water management and soil conservation created techniques that were adopted throughout northern Germany while supporting economic prosperity that enabled expanded charitable activities. Kunigunde's understanding of plant genetics and breeding principles enabled her to develop improved crop varieties that provided higher yields while maintaining resistance to common diseases and environmental stresses. Her experimental approaches to selective breeding created agricultural improvements that enhanced food security while supporting population growth and economic development throughout her region. The technological innovations Kunigunde implemented included improved plowing techniques, irrigation systems, and storage facilities that reduced waste while increasing efficiency of agricultural operations. Her investments in infrastructure development created lasting improvements that benefited entire communities while demonstrating how individual innovation could contribute to broader economic advancement and social welfare. The educational programs Kunigunde established for training agricultural workers encompass both practical instruction in farming techniques and theoretical education in natural philosophy that enabled students to understand underlying principles while developing skills necessary for continued innovation and adaptation to changing conditions. Her teaching methods combined hands-on experience with systematic reflection, producing graduates who could maintain established practices while contributing original improvements. During this period, the remarkable achievements of Dorothea Bucker in medical education and practice demonstrate how exceptional women overcame institutional barriers to establish professional careers that advanced medical knowledge, while providing essential healthcare services to communities that might otherwise have lacked access to qualified practitioners. Born around 1360, Dorothea possessed extraordinary medical knowledge that enabled her to teach at the University of Bologna while maintaining successful practice that attracted patients from throughout northern Italy. Dorothea's approach to medical education combined traditional theoretical instruction with innovative clinical training that provided students with practical experience treating actual patients under expert supervision. Her teaching methods emphasized empirical observation and careful documentation of treatment outcomes, creating educational approaches that produced more competent practitioners while advancing collective medical knowledge through systematic clinical research. The diagnostic techniques Dorothea developed encompassed both traditional methods derived from classical medical authorities and experimental approaches based on her own clinical observations and theoretical innovations. Her ability to integrate established medical knowledge with original insights created more effective therapeutic approaches while maintaining credibility with conservative medical authorities who might otherwise have rejected innovative treatments. Dorothea's pharmaceutical innovations included new preparation methods and compound formulations that utilized both traditional medicinal plants and exotic ingredients obtained through expanded international trade networks. Her understanding of drug interactions and dosage calculations created safer and more effective therapeutic protocols, while establishing standards for pharmaceutical practice that influenced medical development throughout Europe. The clinical training programs Dorothea established created institutional frameworks for transmitting practical medical skills, while encouraging original research that advanced understanding of disease processes and therapeutic interventions. Her graduates carried innovative medical techniques throughout Europe, while maintaining connection to established traditions that provided intellectual continuity across generations of medical practitioners. The story of Margherita Dattini's daughter-in-law, Ginevra, reveals how merchant families created comprehensive commercial networks that connected distant regions while facilitating cultural exchange and technological transfer that enriched European civilization during the later medieval period. Born around 1380, Ginevra possessed exceptional business acumen that enabled her to expand family trading operations while developing innovative financial instruments and commercial practices that influenced European economic development. Ginevra's approach to international commerce encompassed both traditional trading relationships and experimental ventures that exploited new market opportunities created by changing political circumstances and technological innovations. Her correspondence with business partners throughout Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean reveals sophisticated understanding of market dynamics, currency relationships, and political developments that could affect commercial success or failure. The financial innovations Ginevra implemented included early forms of international banking services, insurance systems, and investment partnerships that enabled merchants to conduct business across vast distances while managing risks from piracy, warfare, and natural disasters. Her institutions provided essential services that supported commercial expansion, while generating profits that could be reinvested in expanded operations and community development projects. Ginevra's understanding of cultural differences and linguistic variations enabled her to develop business relationships with diverse trading partners, while navigating complex regulatory environments that required adaptation to local customs and legal requirements. Her success in maintaining profitable operations across multiple jurisdictions demonstrated remarkable flexibility and cultural sensitivity that enabled sustained business growth. The commercial networks Ginevra established created economic relationships that facilitated not just commodity exchange, but also transfer of technological innovations, artistic techniques, and intellectual concepts that enriched European culture while supporting economic development throughout regions connected by her trading operations. Her business activities served broader civilizational purposes by creating channels for beneficial cultural exchange. The architectural achievements sponsored by medieval women during the 14th century encompassed both practical building projects that served immediate community needs and symbolic monuments that conveyed messages about spiritual authority and cultural sophistication to contemporary and future audiences. Women patrons coordinated complex construction projects that required integration of engineering expertise, artistic vision, and practical management skills while maintaining attention to budgetary constraints and political considerations. Mahout Dartois commissioned architectural projects that demonstrated innovative approaches to defensive design while creating comfortable residential spaces that accommodated both practical living requirements and ceremonial functions necessary for effective territorial governance. Her building programs incorporated advanced engineering solutions that anticipated military developments, while creating structures that could adapt to changing defensive needs and residential preferences. The engineering innovations implemented in structures commissioned by medieval women included advanced techniques for foundation construction, structural support, and climate control that created more durable and comfortable buildings, while demonstrating sophisticated understanding of physical principles and material science. Their architectural legacies established engineering standards that influenced construction practices throughout medieval Europe. The artistic elements incorporated into building projects sponsored by women patrons encompass both decorative features that enhanced visual appeal and symbolic programs that conveyed complex messages about religious beliefs, political authority, and cultural values. Their architectural commissions created comprehensive artistic environments that engaged multiple senses while communicating sophisticated intellectual concepts through visual imagery and spatial relationships. The urban planning initiatives developed by women rulers encompass both practical infrastructure improvements and comprehensive design approaches that created more functional and aesthetically pleasing urban environments. Their understanding of how architectural design could influence social behavior and economic activity enabled them to create urban spaces that supported both individual welfare and community prosperity, while demonstrating effective governance through environmental improvement. The story of Christine de Pizan's contemporary, Valentina Visconti, illuminates how royal women used cultural patronage to create international networks that facilitated diplomatic relationships while advancing intellectual development that enriched European civilization during periods of political instability and social transformation. Born around 1371, Valentina possessed exceptional cultural sophistication that enabled her to coordinate artistic projects while maintaining political relationships that served both immediate diplomatic objectives and long-term cultural development. Valentina's approach to cultural diplomacy encompassed both traditional patronage activities and innovative initiatives that created new forms of artistic collaboration between different regions and cultural traditions. Her court became a center for international cultural exchange that attracted artists, scholars, and intellectuals from throughout Europe, while creating works that demonstrated the benefits of peaceful cooperation and cultural synthesis. The literary projects Valentina sponsored encompassed both preservation of existing texts and encouragement of original compositions that addressed contemporary concerns while maintaining connection to established cultural traditions. Her patronage of writers and poets created literary works that entertained audiences while conveying subtle political messages about governance, social justice, and international relationships. Valentina's support for musical innovation encompassed both secular compositions that enhanced court entertainment and sacred works that enriched religious observances, while demonstrating cultural sophistication that reinforced political authority. Her patronage of composers and performers created musical traditions that influenced European cultural development, while providing entertainment that strengthened social cohesion and diplomatic relationships. The educational initiatives Valentina established encompassed both formal instruction for court personnel and broader programs that made cultural resources available to wider audiences throughout her territories. Her understanding of how cultural education could enhance both individual development and social stability motivated comprehensive educational programs that balanced practical training with intellectual enrichment. As our peaceful journey through these extraordinary lives continues like candlelight flickering through ancient halls where wisdom dwells in quietude, we encounter women whose achievements in textile innovation transformed both practical clothing production and symbolic communication systems that conveyed complex messages about social status, cultural identity, and artistic sophistication throughout medieval European society. These women understood that textile creation represented far more than simple craft production, encompassing comprehensive knowledge of materials science, artistic design, and cultural meaning that enabled sophisticated communication through visual imagery and tactile experience. The dyeing innovations developed by medieval women textile producers encompassed both traditional techniques using local materials and experimental approaches that incorporated exotic ingredients obtained through expanding international trade networks. Their mastery of chemical processes enabled them to create unprecedented colors, while developing methods for ensuring color fastness that prevented fading during washing or exposure to environmental conditions that could destroy inferior dye work. Master dyer Aliénor de Poitiers exemplified this tradition of technical innovation through her development of new dyeing procedures that utilized both imported materials and local resources to create color combinations that had never been achieved in European textiles. Her workshops became centers for technical training that transmitted advanced dyeing knowledge while encouraging continued experimentation that pushed the boundaries of what was possible with available materials and techniques. Aliénor's understanding of fiber characteristics and chemical interactions enabled her to adapt dyeing procedures to different types of cloth while maintaining consistent quality across diverse materials and production conditions. Her innovations in mordanting techniques and color application created more durable and vibrant textiles that commanded premium prices in international markets, while establishing her reputation throughout Europe as master practitioner whose techniques other producers sought to emulate. As we reach the gentle conclusion of our 1,000-year journey through these remarkable lives, let the stories of these extraordinary medieval women settle into your heart like starlight on still waters. From Matilda of Tuscany's political genius to Isabella of Castile's transformative vision, we've witnessed how courage, intelligence, and determination transcended every barrier their world could construct. These weren't just individuals who changed history. They were the architects of possibilities we inherit today. May their wisdom guide your dreams tonight, and may you wake knowing that within you lies the same spark that illuminated their path through the darkness of their time.